2021 board meeting. Meeting is being conducted in accordance with Executive Order 202.1. Please note that you may hear the meeting live by going to Village Facebook page at the time of the meeting, which is now. And if you have any questions, you may call in with questions or comments to 914-737-1034. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, wait, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Is Sue Matthews on with us?
I don't see her here yet.
I don't see her. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, everyone. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance,
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to make one announcement. Trustee Pasquale will not be on the meeting tonight, or if he gets back sooner, he will, but he has a family emergency.
Teresa, Sue is on. We'll let her allow her to speak, okay?
Hey, Sue Matthews, hi.
Oh, hi.
I'm on, but you don't see me. Okay.
He's muted.
Okay, Sue, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go. She's on. Whoops. She was unmuted for a second. Sue, on your screen on the bottom left-hand side, you say mute. You just unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go. She's on. Perfect.
Okay, hi.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for being with us, Sue. This is kind of a long time.
There you go.
Yay.
Hi, Sue.
This has kind of taken us a while, Sue, and we apologize for everyone. Sue was our board. She would take our minutes to the board meetings, and Sue started on October 1st, 1990. So I remember, Sue, I was on the board as a trustee from 1994 to 1998. And then I just never had enough, so I came back after that. But I remember Sue from the 90s, and Sue always did a great job for the village. She was at all the meetings, and I'm sure she could tell some good stories over all those years, working with the different mayors and the different boards. But I always found Sue was always, very kind, very nice person, took good notes, and, was an asset to the village. So Sue, we really, really, really wanted to do this differently. That's why we waited so long. We really wanted to have something in the meeting room. We wanted to take you out for dinner, different things to thank you for your service to the village. But it's not looking like things are going to get better anytime soon. So I didn't want to wait any longer. The village board has sent Sue a dish garden.
Yes, it's huge.
Oh,
I
good.
need to get a bigger house.
I'm glad you like it, Sue. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I wasn't going to say anything, but I wanted to say a few words. I want to thank everybody so much. It's been an honor to serve the village board for 30 years, I think it was. I asked Cindy to check that out. I started when George Buchanan was mayor, like you said, and each mayor, especially you, Teresa, have put Buchanan first all the time. We're so lucky to live in Buchanan with the services that we have and a board that works tirelessly for all of us. And I want to thank you, Cindy, for taking over the job of doing the minutes. It's certainly not an easy job, and I spent many hours with the board minutes. And also want to thank my husband, Paul, who was my proofreader. Mm-hmm. And he thinks that he thinks that you should name one of the printers in the village offices after me. But seriously, I thank all the boards for letting me be their secretary. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And we are going to put on one of our printers, Little Susie.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good.
And thank Paul too. Yes, he worked with you too, and he was a great help, and we all appreciate everything. Believe me.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate living in Buchanan and having the wonderful boards, and all the work that you do, and I'm glad that things are going well with, Indian Point and everything, and let's hope that we all come out of this and we can have a regular meeting one day, and, thank heavens for whoever invented Zoom, because otherwise we wouldn't see too many people.
No.
Yeah.
We have to still meet, but we'd be 6 feet apart, probably at the pavilion, so the winter time, that wouldn't work out too well.
Yeah, but thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Best wishes. And don't be a stranger.
Okay.
Okay, approval of minutes, November 10th, 2020. Any comments, corrections?
I have none.
I just got one on the that's okay. Okay.
Sure.
I have nothing.
Okay. Okay, on a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
November 24th, 2020 meeting.
I have nothing.
Nothing from me.
Just one thing on page 3, comments from the floor or chat room. It just says Dan is wondering, and should we not use people's full names if somebody's speaking at a public hearing? I mean, it just seems a little incomplete to just say Dan was one. Who's Dan?
We're gonna have to go back.
I know, I don't think we knew his name, but I'll see if I can find it out.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when people come in, we have to get their, even if we have to interrupt
Yeah.
quickly, get their full names. I think it would be better to have people's full names for the minutes.
You're right, good
Okay.
point, Nick, thank you. On a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the December 1st, 2020 board meeting.
Nothing from me.
Nothing.
All good.
Okay, motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
minutes approved. Comments from the floor, agenda items only, and remember, if you have questions or comments, the number is 737-1034, unless you're on our link. Cindy, any questions? Okay, good, thanks. Okay, under new business, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing regarding the overlay district. And this is
So
something
moved.
we're talking about. Okay, second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have a presentation from FP Clark, and we have David Stolman with us. David, I am going to turn this over to you to do your presentation.
So David, I'll make you the host first.
I'm sorry, yeah, if I could be the host next, that would be great.
Okay, I'm gonna make you the host right now. Where are you, David? Here we go. Okay, you should be host now.
Okay, let me try to do that. Yes,
What a technologically savvy crowd we got here.
Yeah, look out for us.
now I've got to just figure out how to,
We see your screen.
that's good. Okay, here we go. So, thank you, Mayor. I've updated the PowerPoint presentation that you've seen on a number of occasions. Some of this will be old, some will be new. Maybe it's brand new for the public that's watching now. This is regarding, as the mayor said, the C1, C2 overlay district, the rezoning of a portion of the easterly side of Route 9A from M1 manufacturing to C2, and the architectural design guidelines, which my colleague, I was going to say Dominic Minerva. I know Dominic Minerva, but
That's my dad's name.
This is not Dominic Minerva. This is Victor Minerva, one of my colleagues. So, as we've talked about in the past, the purpose of the C1 C2 overlay district is to foster the development and redevelopment of the Route 9A corridor in a manner which would be visually and financially beneficial to the village by the creation of the C1, C2 overlay district and the incentives that are built into the overlay district. Unfortunately, history has shown us that without these kinds of incentives, the village is very likely to not change, or is very unlikely to change its current pattern of land use in the foreseeable future. Not very much has happened over the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, and that could be projected into the future unless we have these incentives. So here we have a map showing in beige the initial C1, C2 overlay district, and you can see it encompasses all of the current C2 zoning district, and the C1 zoning district from Route 9A into the circle, but no farther east, or let's say southeast than the circle. More recently, we have been talking about, and this is incorporated in the local law, the area in Aqua there, which is currently zoned M1 manufacturing, and the local law would change that to C2, just like the land across the street, across 9A to the west of 9A along the frontage. So both sides of 9A would be C2, and then the new C2, that area in Aqua, would be contained in the overlay district as well. And that area in Aqua goes from White Street up to Bleakley Avenue.
So that blue area right now would be considered the Wick area and those few houses to the north.
Yes, correct. So this zoning would improve the appearance and community character of the village, particularly with respect to the gateways into the village, north and south. And this zoning would enhance the image of Buchanan as a place to visit, a good place, a great place to visit, shop, work, and live. It would also increase the value of the subject properties that are involved because of the potential for additional density, especially residential density on those properties. This would in turn serve to broaden the village's tax base. This zoning would encourage development and redevelopment of a character desired by the village. And that will bring us into the design guidelines as well. And the zoning would facilitate or streamline the review and approval process for parcels in the overlay district. So some of the core concepts include increasing the permitted building height from 2.5 stories and 35 feet to 3 stories and 40 feet. There would be there would be an allowance of a reduction of the front yard setback from 30 feet to 20 feet to closer align with existing buildings and to encourage parking behind buildings where possible. There would be an increased permitted density of townhomes from 5 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Currently it's 5, it would go up to 6. And there would be an increased permitted density of apartments, and that would go from the existing 5 dwelling units per acre to 12 dwelling units per acre. Butler buildings and mobile homes would be eliminated in the overlay district. I don't believe mobile homes are permitted now, but we would reinforce that. And this would allow the planning board to increase the coverage, the lot coverage, to no more than 75%, to be more consistent with smaller lots and older lots on Tate Avenue and White Street. The zoning would encourage public spaces with benches and other amenities, as well as landscaping alongside them. And in order to make use of the incentives in the C1 and C2 overlay district, the project proposed would have to comply with, to the extent deemed necessary by the planning board, with the architectural design guidelines, which we'll go over in a little bit. So here are a couple of examples of existing buildings in the village. They're usually fairly small, not attached to each other in many places in the village along 9A and otherwise. Another example. And this is an example of these are examples of some types of architecture. You may find them visually appealing or not visually appealing. We can fine tune this, but these are some examples of architecture which the village may find attractive and desirable for the village in the future. This is 4 stories. You wouldn't. This would be a story shorter, actually. Skipped over this one. Okay.
David, could you go back to that last photo?
Sure.
So here we have 2 full stories and a dormer 3rd story. Would that be considered? I mean, obviously we're talking about a 40-foot height limit. Would this be considered a 3-story building?
Yes, this is 2.5 or 3 stories. Yes.
So a 2-story building could have a peaked roof, but not livable space in that upper level.
2-story.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a 2-story building with a gabled roof and no living space in the upper area, which would be like an attic. But if it's dormered and made into living space, it's 3 stories, even though it could be the same height as a 2-story building with a peak roof.
Right, you could have either.
Yeah, okay.
I think this is fairly attractive. So now I'm going to switch the host to Victor, and he's going to go over the architectural design guidelines in some summary fashion or otherwise. Okay. Testing my skills here.
You gotta stop sharing, and then you can turn them into the host. You gotta stop sharing first.
Okay, got it.
There we go.
Got it. Thank you. I think I did it, Victor.
You did. Just let me find where I am here. Where are you? Just give me 1 second here. I'm having a hard time clicking on my PDF here. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to provide an overview of the draft design guidelines that we developed back in May. There haven't been any changes since then. I don't think we've gotten any comments back from that first presentation. So basically, we did this to kind of provide some guidance on how to encourage lively mixed-use development within the village center. The guidelines are broken down into 7 sections: building location and orientation, building design, access, movement, and streetscape, signage, landscaping, public spaces, and lighting. And I'm going to try to touch on some of the highlights of each of those sections. With respect to building location and orientation, we'd like to encourage buildings that front the street with parking in the back. Things that we don't want to see large continuous parking lots and buildings that do not address the street. What we'd like to encourage, again, is parking in the rear of the building. As Dave mentioned, multi-story buildings, inviting entrances at the street and with small setbacks to the street. In terms of building design, we would like to encourage historic architecture that adds quality of life to the village. We also want to preserve historic buildings that enrich local identity. Encourage, again, multi-use buildings that adds enclosures to the street with continuous architectural treatments. We've provided some examples of what we think is good building design in terms of roofs, with multiple roofs, intersecting roofs, things that make the village center look interesting. Again, another example on the lower right there are parallel and perpendicular roof ridges, which add to the attractiveness of the village. We provide some guidance on roof pitch, minimum and maximum recommended pitches for a variety of roofs, everything from gable roofs to sheds. These are just some examples of attractive buildings. So the one on top with 2 gable roofs, the one on the bottom with some medium-sized retail buildings with pitched roofs. In terms of building facade, one of the things we like to see is encouraging buildings that have contrasting materials that define the base from the upper levels. Facade materials and colors on the building on the lower part there help break up the building mass. Also, screen walls that kind of hide garbage should kind of match the surrounding buildings and not just be out there with typical kind of. You can see the picture on the upper right is just a garbage container there out in front. In terms of access, movement, and streetscape, we provided some guidance for sidewalks. Typically, we say that sidewalks should be at least 6 feet, and they should be 4 feet back from the curb. At the appropriate locations and intersections, we'd like to see high visibility crosswalks to make it easier for pedestrians to cross the street. Where there are no sidewalks and there are gaps in the sidewalks, we'd like to see the sidewalks, these places be connected. There's an example of that, if you can see on figures 21 and 22. In terms of the street and traffic, these are some examples of where there needs to be better pavement markings, marking the lanes and shoulders. Also, there's some locations where there's so many curb cuts. It makes it, their access management is an issue.
Victor, is there a full screen mode or are you on that?
Let me see. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Just minimize me. So in terms of parking, some of this we've kind of mentioned. We want to see parking placed behind the buildings and have it broken up with landscaping to make it more attractive. Here's an example of something we don't want to see. It's a parking lot that's pretty much what we call a concrete desert, and there's no pedestrian movement that's defined. Make it very difficult for pedestrians to walk within the parking lot. Example on the bottom there is something better where you have landscaping and a clear path for pedestrians to walk within the parking lot. This page kind of shows just steps and how a corridor can be redeveloped. Existing conditions kind of show what you don't want, which is redundant and excessive driveways, discontinued sidewalks, no pedestrian connections to building entrances. Buildings are kind of randomly placed. The ideal situation is the one on the bottom where you have buildings and additions are along the uniform build-to line. There are uniform landscape and streetscape standards for setbacks. Parking is located to the sides and back. And on-street parking, if it's possible, you have that, which helps calm traffic. Signage, we have a section on signage. We're saying that all businesses should be limited to a maximum of 2 signs. Buildings located within 30 feet of the street should be limited to the use of a bracket or wall sign. There's some examples of good signage. Being clear and concise. Freestanding signs should be built with materials that blend with the site, such as the Trader Joe's sign down below. Sign lighting should complement the sign. Some examples of signage that we want to avoid. The one on the top you'll see it kind of degrades the functionality of the window. signs that provide too much information and kind of clutter the landscape. Again, the one on the bottom, shows how signs should be integrated into the building form and how freestanding signs can be, should be low, clear, and attractive. The next section we developed was landscaping. You want to make sure you use appropriate native plants, avoid invasive species, encourage diverse plantings. We want landscaping that blends with buildings and the surrounding natural system. The image on the right shows kind of how landscaping can help define parking edges. Again, the image on the bottom left is kind of something you don't want to see, where there's no landscaping and it's just basically concrete. Public spaces. The image on the bottom left is existing public space, a good use of public space. And we want to try to encourage public spaces that can be designed and grounded by public art. Public spaces can also, be used to kind of provide good pathways between locations. The image on the left shows, how you incorporate seating. Public plazas are another thing that we want to encourage. Appropriate lighting, shade cover. This image shows an information kiosk, seating, benches, trash receptacles. We provide some guidance on recommended LED light levels, ranging from 1 foot candle for building entry and active use to 5 foot candles for high security areas, such as like at an ATM. Some examples of bad lighting. This is unshielded light where you get excessive glare. Better lighting, even though it's at a car dealership, so it shows how site lighting serves the needs of users without impacting adjacent properties. Again, we provided some examples of poor and good lighting and the type of fixtures and how lighting can be focused in a certain way to reduce glare. Heights of lights should be pedestrian scaled where appropriate. Gasoline stations should either have canopies that shield lights or use light fixtures recessed into the canopy, again, to prevent glare and light pollution. I think that is the last page.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
So as far as lighting and signage, how do those things get enacted? Are they, is that part of the planning board process? Is it written out in such a way that certain things are allowed and other things are not allowed? How does that actually go from the design guidelines to enactment? What's the enforcement? What's the mechanism?
Dave, I think I'll let you answer that question.
Sure. Well, it's written into the regulations, Nick, and the regulations say specifically any use developed in accordance with this part of the zoning shall be consistent to the extent deemed necessary by the reviewing authority with the design guidelines of the Village of Buchanan. So they're really guidelines as opposed to hard and fast statutes.
Right.
So the planning board has some leeway to talk to the developer, tell the developer that
Okay.
he needs to comply to the extent the planning board believes it's important and necessary.
So there are guidelines, and then it's subject to planning board, site plan review and everything.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Another question. If we say that the planning board can allow up to 75% lot coverage, which is not an outrageous number if you look at some of the older properties in the commercial areas around the circle, and some other places, sometimes these commercial lots already are at 75%. It's not an uncommon number. But anyway, if we're going to allow up to 75%, does this bypass the zoning board? Or would there still be a variance needed? Or is it the planning board can approve that and it does not need to go, that up to 75% the planning board can approve it without it going to the zoning board?
Yes, that's correct, Nick. No need for a variance. And what the section actually says, it's a little more than that. It says the permitted lot coverage in the C1, C2 overlay district may be increased at the sole discretion of the reviewing authority, which would be the planning board, for site plan approval, to no more than 75%, provided that effective perimeter screening is proposed, and the board determines that said increase conforms to sound planning principles.
Okay, and I would point out,
They have the authority without the ZBA.
right, so I would point out that, you know, part of the purpose of the overlay zone is also to streamline some of the process, because it could be a rather lengthy and a multi-step process for any kind of development. And if you kind of set the guidelines and, you know, do things like this to eliminate a step, I think it's, you know, that streamlining is part of the advantage of this type of zoning.
Nick, I know that since Victor still has the control, has Google Earth, do you want him to focus on any areas in the village that you wanted to focus on, Nick, before we open up to the public?
Well, could we, Victor, can you go to 2083 Albany Post Road? Did you hear me, Victor?
Yep, I got it.
Working on it.
Sorry about that.
2083 is 2 3-story buildings in Montrose that people drive past all the time. They're little mini mall buildings. They have parking in front, which is not what we want to do. But I just think that there's 2 buildings side by side there that kind of give a good indication of how the architectural designs can affect the appearance.
Hey, Nick, but Nick, does those places in Montrose have residential on top of them?
Yes, which is
2
still
stories
allowed
or
with
one
the
story?
overlay. That's still, you know,
Victor,
allowed within the overlay.
show it.
Can you see that?
Yeah, Victor, you gotta go back to share screen, and you'll see multiple screens. You gotta pick the screen you want to show. Right now, we're still looking at the PDF.
No, that's funny because I'm looking at this. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta go to the shared screen and make sure you click on the screen you want to show.
And then I want to come back out to the circle, to the halfway house.
There we go.
Okay, perfect shot.
All right.
So the building on the right here was put in, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe? The one on the left was only put in a few years ago.
Mhm.
These are the 2 buildings just south of India House, across from Hilltop.
Right.
And what I find is they both basically have commercial space below and 2 stories of apartments above. And what I find interesting is just looking out on the building on the left, how the addition of that cornice detail, which is the line between the floors, it's like a little roof eave, how that breaks it up, and you know, and instead of having one solid facade, how it just makes the building look more appealing, and it doesn't look it's not as overwhelming. Doesn't appear to be as tall, even though they're both around the same height. When the one on the right has more of the flat facades there, I just found that interesting. How that little architectural detail can totally change the appearance of a building. But here's an example of 2 local 3-story buildings. The idea would be to have these in closer to the street, sidewalk, parking behind.
Hey,
you know.
Hey, Nick, in the in that design concept, if I'm a private owner of the property, what kind of leeway in terms of the concept of what that building front would look like? I mean, are we saying that it should be A, B, C, or D, or
No,
the
good question. Good question. I think there's still a lot of design leeway. You know, the photos that David was showing earlier included a couple of modern designs.
Mhm.
Generally, I think, you know, a lot of people like this more quaint design like we're looking at here. It's kind of, you know, more in line with what we have, but the planning board they're not required to make everything look like that.
Right. So if I'm the owner and I come to the planning board with my design, aesthetically is one thing, and then the bare boneness of the height and length and how it's broken down is under my control, let's say.
Well, it's so under your control and the architect's control to the extent that the planning board finds it acceptable.
Right. Exactly.
You know, there's not, every building doesn't have to look alike. We're not looking for that. Now, another thing is, you know, Victor was showing a picture of the building in the Village Circle where the book distributor is, which is a great looking, the old stone buildings are wonderful looking. And there's two old stone buildings on 9A right now. One of them is just north of the firehouse, and another one's a little further up, just below Selleck's. Both of which are only about, by the way, they're only set back about 15 feet or so from the property line. They're out close.
That was
and
one
they're
of
nice
my
looking old stone buildings. If somebody wanted to do a stone facade, they could. You know, I think one of the buildings in the initial group of photos David was showing did have a stone facade.
Right. Well, that's the printing, the book building, I think it's called, or something.
Yeah, so somebody can come in with something a little different than this. I don't think the design guidelines dictate an exact style. It's not I mean, there are some places where everything's got to be Tudor style, you know?
Right.
Hey, Victor, I know we're focused on this, but just to give you another example of old and new, if you can maybe go with Google Earth again and go into Dobbs Ferry, is I think it's Cedar Street and Chestnut, right at that corner, just to show the board some interesting concepts are there as well.
Sure.
We went through that. We went through that as well. It shows you a building that was built in the 1800s, and then right next to it, it was built in the about 10 years ago. Right at the corner of Chestnut.
So let me just ask a question while we're looking for that. Back to around our circle area, that stone building, I guess we're assuming that a one-story addition to it could be possible. And what about the old Sal's Pizza on the other side? Would that could you get another story there, or no?
Well, let's after we look at this building, Marcus just talked about
the Village Circle. Back out to the circle and specifically look at the halfway house.
Yeah,
that was fairly newly renovated. Plus,
it should be right next to the cookery, right there.
Okay.
That might be Main Street. Might get confused.
Dobbs Ferry and then the Village Circle.
Yes. Oh yeah, if you go a little bit more up to that corner.
Keep going.
Yeah, that build. Turn. Yeah, turn. You went too far. Come back up the block. That building to your left right now, just so everybody know, that was a book binding building built in the 1800s. That building you're looking at right there.
Yeah.
You go up the block a little bit, Victor. Turn view to the right. That building across the street right there, that has the corner to your left.
Mm-hmm.
That building was built 10 years ago. Just to show you the different years and how it was built.
That brick building in the center of the screen was built 10 years ago?
Correct.
That one there on the
that one right there. That was 10 years ago, and the one across the street with the brick building that was built in 1860 something.
Now that's 4 stories, right? It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
I'm not saying
4-story.
Yeah, but I just want to show you a different concept. Brick, you can do brick and everything else. So you can go back to the village. I just want to show you how you can tie in real old buildings with newer buildings and tie them in.
Right.
Sorry, Victor. Now you go back to the circle.
Okay. I can get back here. Let's see. Come on.
And that building, just before we leave, they made a restaurant on the bottom floor and apartments above.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that the Buchanan waterfall there?
Yeah. So that building straight ahead, that's 3-story, and that is the halfway house.
Yes, which was originally a boarding house.
History. So that's 3-story there.
Can you come a little closer to that, Victor? Yeah. So, and parking in rear.
It looks very different today.
Now, when that was redeveloped, what would that be? About 10 years ago? More, maybe.
That's 12 or 13 when that was done.
Sidewalk on the left they had built a shed that virtually blocked that whole sidewalk, and it was part of the restaurant or whatever
Part of
inside
the
there.
bar there.
Part of the bar. So
John-
that, when this was redone, it got brought back to the original building line. They eliminated that horrible shed. And if you could step back a little bit, we could see that this is actually 3 stories.
Right.
Mhm. So the potential there would
great
only
view.
be 2 buildings that could conceivably add another story.
Yeah, it's interesting point, Dwayne. I was kind of thinking in terms of people redeveloping, but that's true. I suppose somebody could apply to add a 3rd story onto
Right.
2-story.
Just okay.
Could we look at the elevation of that stone building right there, the one with the white roof? How did you get up in the air like that?
Oh, no, it just took me back down. No, come on. All right.
It's the new drone view. Yeah, so there's 2 stories already with 2 different stones. I wonder if one, what that was originally, but it's actually a building with a lot of character in the village circle there.
Well, what's interesting about that particular building is if you go on the other side, there's that elevated driveway that goes up.
Yes.
So I know
so we
that
have to
might this
go to the
development
corner and
wise
make a
might
right
present a
turn.
problem.
Go to the corner and make a right turn. Now turn around from where you are. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Now look to your right.
You went too
more.
far.
Yeah.
A little more. Yeah, you got to go back up to the circle there.
And just for full disclosure, I do own a building in the village circle. This is not happening. There's no consideration because of my building. I would not be interested in putting a 3rd floor on the building
Yeah, so
that I renovated 11 years
Okay.
ago.
right, and that's a very nice looking building there actually. So here's the stone building there beyond the little truck there. Could they add a 3rd story? I suppose they could.
Yeah. All right.
Pretty sturdy building.
A question.
Structurally, the building is sound, I guess.
Looks pretty sturdy.
Yeah, it is. That's a stone building. That was well built.
Yeah.
That's not,
Yeah. So
Hey, David.
Yes.
Yeah, just a question back to the signage. You did a review of our current signage regulations or restrictions or both in the that's existing on books on what we have in place now, and kind of ran it up against what kind of signage you would look at in the overlay zone. Was that kind of analysis done?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We actually didn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, but the architectural design guidelines have more to do with the materials, the placement, the lighting, than size. So
Correct. We didn't really provide any guidance on size. It was more about look and feel than anything else.
I see. Okay, but they were in line with what's currently existing in our planning guidelines.
they're compatible. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Also, on the was any thought given to the egress in terms of the driveways going into these developments?
I'm not sure what you mean, Dwayne.
Well, let's say, for instance, that at the Dunkin' Donut, that development there, if we had a lot that was of that size, would you have egress and coming out, going in one way and coming out the other way, that type of thing?
I think the only thing we kind of made reference to regarding that is trying to just, and that kind of speaks to your question, is eliminating, multiple curb cuts. So you don't have, you don't necessarily need separate entrances and exits at certain lots.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's just in consideration of what the overlay district could provide or not provide.
Right.
I suppose that would be part of the site plan review as well. And
Mm-hmm.
if it was 3 or 4 townhouses versus, you know, something with dozens of apartment units.
Right.
The parking could become an underground level. There could be, it could be that the architect determines that, you know, a one-way in and out, one way in, another way out would be better. But that's certainly part of the site plan review.
I mean, it's looking down the road, but it was just caught my attention that, you know, that was part of.
I think frankly, it is a site plan matter. It's more traffic engineering in terms of the location and number of driveways, in terms of safety, in terms of convenient access. It's less architectural review guideline work and more traffic engineering, I think.
Right. Okay.
I have a couple of other things, if I may.
Okay.
Teresa,
yes,
please.
Let
me do this, and then you can.
No, that's why we're having a public hearing, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Actually, Teresa and I were speaking earlier today, and you know, while the intent is to put in some nice buildings, you know, allow for more residential, what we want, you know, what we do not want is junkyards and not the contractor yards, not that they are junkyards, but they can be. I'm thinking that we should have something in here that specifically eliminates contractor yards as a allowable use along this corridor. Is that something we need to do or should do? I mean, you know, right now there's an auto body shop that may not be there. You know, it's not going to be there forever.
Nick, I think that's more dealing with the underlying zoning. I don't see the overlay district saying you can't have this use that is permitted in the underlying zoning. But if it's an inappropriate use in the C1 or the C2 district, we should address it directly that way.
Okay. Separate issue.
In concert with what we're doing in terms of creating the overlay district. But I don't see the overlay district saying you can't have this use or that use in the overlay district when the underlying zoning still permits it.
So separate but similar issue that the suggestion is to include the chain. There's an M1 area. There's about 5-6 houses across from Raul Lindo's auto body. Along that stretch, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's 6 houses total. And the suggestion is to include them, is to change them to C2. So that would require a separate resolution too. That would not be part of the overlay, correct? The overlay could incorporate it, but the change to C2 would have to be a separate resolution.
It could go in the same local law.
It could be done along with the overlay?
Part of the same local law, yes. It would not be part of the overlay district if that is not desired by the village, but it could be a different portion of the local law enacting it separately.
Okay. All right. I personally think that's a good idea. You know, because basically that whole stretch is housing, except for one portion of the WIC property that flags to the road in between 2 residential properties, and it's currently M1, which would be, you know, there's nothing you want to do that relates to an M1 zone between those 2 houses. So I would suggest that we do go along with that proposal to just change that strip of houses on 9A between Blakely and Tate to C2. There's also the Con Ed property, which you're looking at when you're at the end of Tate Avenue, and it's a big rock outcropping, and it's Con Ed property. I don't see anything possibly happening there. That's all rock.
Nick, is this on the easterly side of 9A?
On the east side of 9A, right in the curve there, when you come out of Tate Avenue, it's exactly what you're looking at.
Because I think that isn't that land that we've already included in what we're doing now?
It is. I don't think anything would. Is that part of the C2? Oh yeah. Okay. It's. I guess what I'm trying to say is yes, we should change it to C2. Although in the case of that little portion opposite at the end of Tate, it's almost a moot point because I don't see how that could possibly get developed there. It's all rock.
Right.
But I think we're including it anyway.
We include it anyway. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't,
And Nick, if I may, I know what you're saying about rock, but I've seen if the market hits a certain spot, I can see the developer making it cost effective to do it. So I think if you want to control what you want to see there, it's better do it now. They have to deal with somebody that comes in with an application, and then you got to stop it.
So now, could you go keep that view? Could you come down a little bit on that view? Just drag it down slightly. No, not zoom, but drag it down a little bit.
This way or the other?
The other way. And go east a little bit. What are all those cars on the Con Ed property? That's part of the Con Ed property.
Property, Nick.
That's Wick.
Huh?
That's Wick.
That's Wick.
That's all Wick.
That portion is Wick?
Yes.
Will we?
Will we?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, I see where the power lines are. Let's see.
Right above it.
Yeah. Okay, so the power line is roughly where the border is. So the power line between the power line and 9A is Con Ed property. Between the power line and the road there is Wick property.
It could be some of that property could be Wick, and then they have a right of way to go over it. Because if you go to the village maps,
I'm looking at it right now. The Con Ed property is a triangle that incorporates the entrance to Wick.
Mm-hmm.
The entrance to Wick is actually on Con Ed property, but everything behind the first 20 or so feet of the entrance, 20, 30 feet of the entrance, is all Wick.
Mm-hmm.
So all those cars, just another junkyard in the village, huh?
Yeah, so your point about lay down area and stuff like that, I totally agree with you to stop this kind of.
Just say what you mean by lay down area, because I didn't know what the term meant when you first used it before.
And David, maybe I don't know if it's the right term, but lay down area is everything I consider like storage of materials and storage of vehicles and stuff like that. That's what I've been using.
Contractor yards.
Yeah. So, David, would you agree with that terminology or something different?
Yeah, I've heard it used that way, sure.
Remember, this property has not had a site plan approved ever. They were in front of different boards and things, so it's an ongoing.
So another thing we have to remember here, along with this overlay, is that what we do not, anything that's not dealt with as far as enforcement weakens the whole thing, because you can't encourage development when you've got a building falling apart and you don't enforce its repair or removal. Nobody wants to build townhouses across from a junkyard. So we do have to very much remember that we've got to really tighten up enforcement, or it's going to be hard to encourage people in certain locations. And maybe as things get developed, maybe it'll help with the enforcement because it'll, have an effect on improving the whole area. But we definitely have to remember that if we need to keep up enforcement of some of the eyesores and dilapidated things that should not be there.
Okay.
Just, an important side note, I think.
So if we're done with the maps, Victor can give me the host back, and then Mayor, if you want to open it for public comment, then we can look at people's hands.
Are there any other board members who'd like to comment?
Can we look at the zoning map for a moment? Sorry, Teresa.
No, sure.
Can we look at the zoning map for a moment? Could I get the host shift back?
Sure. Hold on a second.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll make you the host.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave.
Okay. So, I think we're talking about the area in and around that aqua-colored area,
Yes.
from White up to Blakely.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that be widened, or is that wide enough the way it's shown?
No, I think you're lining up with the backs of the house properties, right?
Yes.
And I mean, we're looking at, what is it, 100 foot deep, 120 foot deep?
Probably 100 to 120, something like that, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got the GIS site open right now, and I can tell you that the 5 houses that are together up at the north end there range from 100-foot deep to 120-foot deep.
Okay,
And the one standing by itself by the entrance to Wick, which was where that nursery was briefly, is about 128 feet at its deepest point. So, as if you're following the backs of those properties and bridging them, then I think, it's fine. It's in keeping with what's following along there right now.
okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
While you have this map up, can I just bring up a couple other things? We've gotten some letters and comments from a few different people, some of whom might be listening in now. And I'm going to raise a couple of these questions on behalf of those people to see what the board and the planners think. One is, a couple of people said, why not include the whole C1, C2 zone? And the only portion of the C1 or C2 zone that's not currently included is the properties lining Tate Avenue from the Village Circle to First Street. And I left that out in my initial suggestions because it's primarily, there's the Village Hall and it's primarily residential. And, I was a little concerned about extending it in there. I think possibly, because somebody also commented that it should include the whole circle. I don't know. I suppose we could consider letting it include the properties that are adjacent to the circle all around. One of those Teresa just spoke for with no intention of doing anything to. And the only other property then is the property where the deli was. It's now Casabella. What's his name? The contractor's office.
Oh, yep.
But again, we don't want that to become a contractor's yard. It's one thing to have your offices there. It's not intended for that to become a construction vehicle storage yard, especially right there in the circle.
I didn't think trucks and things like that were allowed there overnight.
So we need to possibly include the properties that are in the full circle, but we also need to, again, make sure that doesn't become a contractor's yard over there. That's not what we want in the Village Circle, I'm pretty sure. And the other thing, somebody, one or two people suggested including the stretch along Blakely Avenue. Again, one side of that is all residential, and the other side is also already, the part of the Greentown Road Industrial Complex for the most part. So I'm just throwing it out there to see what other people think about that. Any other board members have an opinion on that?
I think on the north side of Blakely Avenue, there's really, I'm trying to think, there's not really much property there. I mean, the village owns their piece of property on the corner of 9 and Blakely.
Which is included in the overlay.
Right, but then if you're going Blakely, then you have McHale's, which is there now.
Right.
And then, you have to remember, you have the gas pipeline too. That takes a big swath down there. And then you have the industrial park, and then you have the clay hole, basically.
And,
what that side of the road looks like.
Yeah. And the south side of Blakely is, except for there's the corner deli on 9A, and there's an electrical contractor behind there.
The old fire.
Otherwise, it's all residential.
Yeah. And it abuts the Con Edison park. In the back is all Con Edison property.
Right. Yeah.
So what are you saying, Nick, is that the overlay
No, I'm just saying a couple of people commented and raised that question. So, I'm just wondering what the board thinks of that idea. Or maybe when we open it up to the public, we can get comments from anybody that's, had made that suggestion or would like to raise a point about it. I'm just bringing it up because there were 3 or 4 different people that said something along those lines. I'm not sure that I necessarily want to do that, but I'd like to let other people weigh in and raise the point. People raise the question, so it should be addressed.
Okay.
All right, any other board members? Do you have any comments or questions? Before I open it up?
I think I want to go back to that issue that we were talking about with the size of the apartments. Is that appropriate at this time?
Sure. I don't see why not.
Okay, well, having had that discussion with the school superintendent, I'm kind of looking now toward the idea of, going up to or having the availability of someone wants to do 3 bedrooms, that might not be a bad idea. It's just a thought going forward. And, I do agree with Rich's concern about the traffic, which would be a traffic engineering point of view in terms of increased traffic along that corridor. But I think that's something that could maybe be dealt with down the road, but not necessarily stopping the overlay district from going into effect. But just a statement that I'd like to make with that concern. That's
So, Dwayne, are you for 3 bedrooms? And what
Yes.
was the conversation that you had with the superintendent? I know you were.
Yeah, well, the idea that the enrollments have been declining, and certainly if we're looking at overall development for the village, I think it might be prudent to have some 3 bedrooms there to encourage families to move in with children.
And what I also want to comment is on a little history of Blakely. I've been told this many years ago. The 9A road that we have there was at one time the only road that went from the city to Albany.
To Albany.
So on Sundays, you want to talk about traffic, Rich, I was told that road was bumper to bumper cars on Sundays. Just a little history. And no, Nick, I wasn't there at the time.
What are you reading my mind, huh?
Yes. Okay.
Just one thing, when you come up to Montrose Deli there, if you're coming north, let's see, I'm just trying to think. There's a turning lane, right? When you're making a left onto Kings Ferry Road. I'm not a traffic planner, but I envision that any place that a key to not blocking the traffic is to have a center turning lane. If there's enough width there for that, like they did out on portions of Route 6, by adding the turning lane to turn left or right, to turn left into businesses or left into another road, the other vehicles can keep moving in the travel lane. It's if there's no separate turning lane that everything's going to stop until somebody can get through.
Right.
So, I'm not a traffic engineer, but that would seem like one thing that would be a simple.
I'm sure there would be traffic studies and recommendations.
Right.
Yeah.
The way the zoning is structured right now, it does not prohibit 3-bedroom units. It basically says that the planning board at its sole discretion can allow 3-bedroom units, but no more than 20% of the units in the project could be 3-bedroom.
Well, when we were talking about it initially, there was some talk about not having to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the planning board can go up to 20%. Yeah.
That's the way the local is structured right now.
That's what it's written now. Yeah.
All right, so
Makes sense.
let's
I
open
like
it
that.
up to the public if there's no other board members. And I don't know if Harmon Backer is going to comment, but he said that the purpose of including Blakely Avenue is to connect the riverfront to the village.
So, Teresa, have we opened the public hearing yet?
No.
Yes, I did.
No?
No, I didn't. Oh my God, I apologize.
Oh, I thought.
All right,
No, I thought we
on a
did.
motion.
No, we did.
Did you?
No.
Cindy?
Yes, you did. You opened
Perfect.
it, yes.
Okay, I'm
Good.
not losing my
Wow.
mind yet.
Perfect.
Talk about
Thank
short-term
you.
memory.
Thank
I
you.
know. We did so much talking.
I know. It was so much to talk about. Okay, so
Perfect.
the hearing is open. The board has spoken. So now we're going to open it up for public comments. And once again, I will repeat the question, the statement, the purpose of including Blakely Avenue is to connect the riverfront to the village. Thank you.
So we got two hands raised. Teresa, who do you want me to open it up first?
Oh, okay, who's the first up?
Sean Murray, I'll open him up.
Sean Murray, the planning board chairman.
Yep, I'm going to transfer him to our panelist, so you'll be able to see him, you'll be able to speak. Sean, you're on, you can unmute and turn on your video.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the planning board, and then I'll have some comments and some responses to some of your questions. First, I want to thank everybody for looking into changing some of the codes. I have asked the planning board to review the previous draft that was submitted back in the summertime, and we received the draft that was dated in December for our review. And we've been asked to make comments based on the last document, that is the draft document which you guys have. At this time, I'm receiving comments from the other planning board members. I've received comments from 2 members so far, and we will have a document that we're going to review at the next planning board meeting. So I would like to request that the village board leave this public hearing open until we can cull all of the data that the planning board members have asked, and that we can put it together into a cohesive document to submit it to you guys for review. So we're not at that stage yet. I will have all the comments, and I've asked them for all the comments by the next meeting, and I should have a draft document there soon after. But it'll definitely be available to you guys at either your next workshop meeting and definitely the next public hearing on this matter. So,
thank you, Sean. I think also you are correct. It's too soon to close the public hearing. I think it needs to be open. There's more comment and input that needs to be given.
Like I said, I did receive some comments from some of the board members. We haven't had, so preliminarily, we haven't had any issues with the architectural guidelines. We actually use a lot of these guidelines right now. We have, even when I was on the planning board in the early 2000s, when we were doing the remodeling on the halfway house as well as Bob's Corner Store. And we did ask them to do certain things. And the property owners were reluctant because it had reduced some of their ability to rent extra rooms. But based on the entry and egress that many of you have talked about, we felt that the type of development that and the product that they ended up with was satisfactory to all the parties. We, on the planning board, we go over the entry and egress that that Dwayne had talked about. We had take into consideration garbage removal. We take into consideration direct entries and egresses based on traffic flows at peak times. The traffic studies are a different issue. We do traffic studies for a lot of these multi-family and multi-use buildings. But the issue that at least one of the members had brought up to me was a traffic issue with this large apartment building that is being contemplated. We, as the planning board, I don't believe we would have purview to limit the size of the population of the building based on traffic if it is a permitted use. Having a permitted use at that population density should already take into the traffic calculations. So, for instance, if the maximum use was the 4-story building and the maximum population density of the apartment building, the planning board then cannot say, for your use, there's too much traffic. That is a direct invitation of an Article 78 proceeding, and I don't believe the village would be able to prove its point to limit the development because it's as of right development. So that's somewhat of a quandary. You know, we haven't had a lot of Article 78s within the village. The last one that we had lost was in the 80s on Greentown Road, and we had suffered the effects for a long time from that. So I would like you guys to take that into consideration when you're talking about the density of this construction. The traffic should be analyzed up front because it can't be analyzed in the back end. because it'll look like we're just trying to prevent it on a technicality, which isn't something we should strive for. Nobody has mentioned anything about the height of the buildings or the setbacks. And there again, this is all preliminary. I know you guys have had my comments and my opposition to this on several fronts, but I'm talking as the chairman of the planning board for the planning board. So I want to get all of their input together. My comments as a citizen are separate, you know. That's basically it. You know, it's been the preliminary stages. We've actually tried to institute the street smarts, New York State street smarts, that had come into effect a couple of years ago, when it talks about entry and egresses and sidewalks and markings and things to that effect. We actually had a training class on it 2 years ago in Rockland County, where myself and a couple of members had attended, but those people aren't on the board anymore. So, but that's about it as a planning board member. But if you want to let everybody else talk before I talk as a citizen, that'd be fine.
The traffic thing, when the gas station went in on the corner of Tate and 9A there, isn't the DOT brought into the equation? And wasn't it them that indicated that they had to put the light at the egress from the gas station? I mean, is that not part of the process to get the DOT's recommendations?
I wasn't involved in that project, Nick. That project predated me on the planning board. I believe that was in the early to mid 90s that project was in. We did not consult the DOT when we gave the preliminary site plan approval for the property on Lindsay Avenue that was across from the hardware store. You know that's not developed right now, but that did have preliminary site plan approval many years ago. The owner wanted to try and redo parts of it, and it fell through, and he has since lost his property. But we did not consult the DOT with that, but we did have traffic studies, and that was one of the issues. We had talked about sidewalks up on Lindsay Avenue. We had made that a requirement. We had made a requirement for sidewalks in front. We had made a lot of requirements, and all those things are taken into account. However, I don't believe any approvals or recommendations from the DOT were asked for or received for that property. I cannot speak for the gas station.
Right. The DOT, the New York State DOT, has jurisdiction over all curb cuts along Route 9A. So,
but there's no curb there.
No. I'm not saying there is. This is just a general statement. Just a general statement regarding the DOT's authority, jurisdiction.
So that's all I had as a planning board chair.
Okay. Marcus, are there anyone else with their hands raised?
Yes, Suzanne, we'll move her over right now.
Okay. And then we'll get back to you, Sean.
Sure.
Okay, Suzanne, you're on. You can turn on your video and unmute yourself if you wish. I moved Suzanne up, but I don't see her unmuting herself. So I got Jeremy Basso. I can allow him to come in. Jeremy, you're up. You can unmute yourself and turn your video if you wish. There you go.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. How are you? So I think this is a pretty interesting opportunity to sort of change what we refer to as the 9A corridor. I think that when you enter the village, it's not exactly one of the most visually appealing approaches to enter what is an otherwise pretty fantastic little village. And I am struggling to find the negative impact that would be associated with implementing some sort of an overlay district. I think encouraging development and getting some of the government red tape out of the way by sort of setting the appropriate standards to encourage people to make a financial investment and have an opportunity to beautify the community and all additional opportunities for housing and also business, and bring in additional sources of disposable income to be able to support the local businesses makes an awful lot of sense, especially as we're looking at a reduced tax situation. We have declining student enrollment, which is pretty typical, I think, for many suburban communities in the Northeast, although we'll see what happens after COVID flee from the cities. But again, I think there's things that need to be hammered out, though I think we need to figure out a lot of different unintended consequences, sort of think this through. I'm sure we're not going to end up with parking issues as a result, and have cut-throughs take place on Tate Avenue because people are trying to go around traffic patterns that may exist. Sure, I think it's important that we think through completely all of the different implications, but at the end of the day, encouraging an opportunity for development, because this is one of the communities in northern Westchester that has little to no outside interest in development. And you have to stand back and wonder, why does a Rivertown have very little interest in people buying property here and building? And maybe some of the requirements to have to go in with hat in hand, ask permission, is not exactly a very encouraged proposition when you're making a large investment. Whereas this is going to create an opportunity to say, hey, if you're going to operate inside these parameters, we're sort of opening the door to invite you in. And then, of course, they can still go zoning and planning for any sort of changes that they want that may fall outside of this new overlay zone. So I don't think it eliminates the need for these boards, but I think it encourages people to say, hey, we're open for business and we're looking for people that want to work with us to come in and help make us better.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. And yes, we are looking to encourage business and development for our tax base that is dwindling. So, but thank you. You also made some very good points.
There's, in some of my actions throughout some of the development ends of Westchester County, I can share with you that there's a lot of people that are investing around neighboring communities that don't have the same excitement here because they're not sure how well they'll be received, and how their projects will be able to actually take hold and come to fruition. So people don't want to waste their time and efforts on plans and this and that if they're not encouraged that there's actually a want, a need, and an opportunity to get these things to the finish line. So I think this sort of demonstrates to the outside world that you're open for business and you're looking for change, because frankly, things are changing. So we're either going to watch them happen around us or we're going to participate.
Change is happening.
Good point.
Mayor, Eileen, I just added her on. So Eileen, you can unmute and turn your video if you wish.
Okay, I don't need to turn the video on.
Come on.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, Eileen.
I was looking at the master plan, and at one point we were looking at commercial industrial development, and we looked at a local development agency. Nick, do you remember that?
Yeah, I think that, it's sort of like, speaking for myself, I had a laundry list of things on my mind that would be good for the village when I first got on the board 10 years ago. And one of them was to do something along these lines. And I don't think I fully understood at that point what a development agency was versus, some of the other options. And they all are different tools for encouraging development. And I do remember that, Eileen, but I don't know that I ever fully grasped how that worked, or if that. So, do you have any other?
No, but what I'm looking at is if you're going with an overlay and you're trying to invite businesses or mixed use into the village, I would imagine you have to put out the tentacles to find out who would be interested. And I thought that was part and parcel of that local development agency, whether it be real estate agents, whether it be developers, whatever the case. Of course, they also have to have the property owners who want to sell their property to be able to develop. Dwayne, I have a question for you. We have no stock in regards to houses for sale. Realtors are crying for stock. that means that all these families coming up from the south of Westchester County, coming in from New York City, are all bringing families in. I'd be very careful as to how this school district is going to handle the increase that will occur once these families start to put roots in. There is no stock. You don't have any stock for housing. So I'm not quite sure when you spoke to Joe Hochreiter or what his projection was, but the realtors are crying that there is no stock for the number of people coming in, and they're not old people. The old people are leaving for no tax places, Florida, North Carolina, whatever it is. The young people are trying just to get out of the city, and they see this as their dream. Also, I was wondering, and David, you may have answered this question, but on the Route 9 corridor from, let's say, White Street on, when you talk about sidewalks, how does that impact? Would that be on the eastern side or the western side in regards to how you'd want the sidewalks? In other words, would it be on Selleck's side, or would it be on his historic gas station site that's across the street? Which is not historic, I guess, but...
and it's not his anymore either.
Oh, okay.
I think with the sidewalks, and there's a question I have down for Marcus where we are with that, but we'll talk about that later. But I think right now the continuation is more on the west side, especially since we've gotten a grant from Blakely Avenue to the gas station there. I think it would be easier to do it on the west side, to be honest with you, because there's more sidewalk there now.
Yeah.
On the west side.
On the west
So
side.
in other words, it would be from White Street to Lindsay Avenue. Is that what you're saying? That would be the continuation of a sidewalk?
Yeah, because we have sidewalks.
Yeah, there are bits of it.
Or Tate Avenue.
Yeah.
The
All right, so how does that impact the residents on that on the corridor if they're on residential side, and those houses are not that far set back? Also, if you're looking for a turn lane, how would that even work if you have sidewalks that are going to take part of the property owner's land, possibly, that they're then responsible for to maintain and to clear? How would you end up with a turning lane if that was even a feasible idea? I don't even know if I see sidewalks as feasible at this point, even though they may be nice.
I think that the sidewalks could come about on both sides, and there's different ways it could come about. I mean, if the village had the grants or money, they could do a continuous sidewalk, except, then when a developer came in, they'd have to do their own, they'd have to redo the curb cuts. But we could also, if some of those lots have a pretty wide frontage, the two large lots on the east side that are undeveloped, one near the hardware store and one across from the high school there.
Right.
And if it's required when they put the building in, they have an egress to their parking, and then require that they do the portion of the sidewalk in front of the building. So it could come about pieces, and then the village can maybe connect the dots, so to speak. But there are some bits of sidewalk here and there, so it's a good question.
I'm looking at your overlay on 9A, where all those residential houses are, across from the firehouse, across from, it looks, there's a house that's in between where the PT, Blue Mountain is, Blue Mountain PT, that building, and I don't know if there's a house in between, but then there's that house that's kind of covered with brush that is got boards up on windows. Is somebody living in there, or is that abandoned?
That's abandoned.
Oh, it is abandoned.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I didn't know who owned it or whatever.
Market taxes are still, the taxes were paid up as of last year. So it's just an elderly woman whose family decided that it wasn't safe enough for her to live there anymore. So they have taken her to live with them. So there's no one living there. So that's why the house was boarded up.
Okay, the last question I have, and this may be a question Sean has too. I'd like the comparison of putting in mixed use to commercial, the value of the taxes, the services, anything that would be relevant to an increase for our tax purposes as a resident. I'd also like to know, looking at the Carbone building, you have parking in the front for the shops, the Dunkin' Donuts and the Chinese restaurant and Nona's, and then you have parking in the back, which is also for there was a nail place in the liquor store. So you had parking on both sides. David, you have proposed with Victor that parking be in the back of any of these buildings. How does a handicapped person get to the store if it's located on a hill like Carbone's is? Carbone's is basically on a hill. So is there an entrance? Do you not have a store in the back of the building so that you have an entrance for disabled people to get in?
You certainly could have more than one or more than 2 points of access, but we're not recommending these things with unconditionally. The situation has to meet certain parameters in order for the parking to be going in the back. But if we have a flat area, all other things being equal, we'd rather have parking behind the building than in front of the building. So you have to look at each situation separately and differently. But it's an ideal to try to achieve, but you can't always achieve it.
Okay, because I don't see that if you're looking at some of the vacant properties on Route 9. Not that they're hilly necessarily, but it's not like being in Dobbs Ferry. It's not like being in Peekskill, where all these stores are so centrally located that you can park in the back, or you can park in a parking lot that is provided, public parking.
Yeah, if it's possible and practical, and it could either go in the front or the back, it's preferable to have it behind the building.
Okay. All right, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hey, Eileen, can we just respond to your question about the enrollment?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, no, I mean, anecdotally speaking, even before COVID hit, just to use Lake Drive and Hilltop as an example of the last 5 last 5 homes that were bought and sold in this little area, everybody who came in were young professionals with no children. And to date now, we only have the latest sale, which is actually right next door to me, with, again, another young couple coming in, and they have no kids. So all the 4 previous owners who came in all have children now. So as you say, and I've spoken to a couple of the real estate people too, there's no houses available in the area, let alone in Buchanan. So, that's something that with the market changing and with the normal in and out migration, it is what it is.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Eileen.
I think it's a social trend towards young people, not rushing into marriage, not rushing to have kids, and who knows, maybe there'll be a post-COVID baby boom.
Teresa, I just let Jennifer Barker in. She was the last person who would raise their hand. So
Barker, I think.
Barker.
Oh, is it? Okay. Hi, Jennifer.
Jennifer, you can unmute and turn on your video if you like. Jennifer, you're still muted.
Technology, huh?
Yeah, Jennifer, if you can hear us, you're still muted. Her husband is getting on, so let me see if I can unmute him. Harmon, you're on. You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, she didn't raise her hand.
Oh, okay.
She was on the other phone next to me. Yeah, she said, I don't know how my hand got raised.
Oh, okay, no problem.
I do want to say a few things, if I can.
Sure, absolutely.
So the one point about the Lakely Ave, and I know that was an original plan, and again, maybe this is over the top, but I think everything should be put out there just to be considered, is the whole Peekskill waterfront has been developed, the whole walkway. Basically, you walk from the Peekskill train station to, I believe, Lens Cove, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
And from what I understand, there's been a lot more traffic into Lens Cove because of that, bikers in the summer, stuff like that. So again, maybe a pipe dream, but if this goes, wouldn't it be great if people just continued that walk into the village and entered our shops, our restaurants, our commercial businesses that are put in there, if so be it. So again, I don't know if the development can be done. Again, Mayor, you mentioned some issues with the pipeline and some of the other items over there, but again, that was the whole point. That was one of my ideas as far as connecting the riverfront, and then the eventual development, possibly of Indian Point, if that ever occurs.
It will. I'm just not sure when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the second thing, again, somebody questioned, my background is real estate. You've all mentioned real estate as far as, no houses being available, and, you put a house on the market and it sells immediately. Again, I'm not a valuation guy. I don't value for tax base, but to me, I think if you revalued every home in Buchanan, the valuations would be astronomical, because that's what's valuable today versus commercial. Commercial is tough, especially retail. People are straying away from that. E-commerce is keeping people from retail. The only businesses that are really thriving are the service businesses. Restaurants, barbers, CPAs, lawyers, those type of services still, and they even are working from home. The work from home remote is forcing people not to want to have commercial buildings. So, you talk about valuation. The valuation, I think, is going to be in the multifamily area. I think if you open it up to multifamily homes, you're going to see a high demand. As I think Jeremy pointed out, as long as the red tape is kind of made easier, that's what people are going to look for. And as far as the school enrollment, I've been looking on the website and I can't find it, but there was a trend, there was something posted of the enrollment in the school for the last, I think, 10 years, and it's just trending down. And I know there is a concern of people moving in the area, but people aren't having kids early in life. People are having kids later in life. They're having one kid, maybe two kids. They're not having 6 or 7. So I think it's a concern of this area in general. And who knows, once the city opens up again and people realize their commute is an hour long, they're going to want to move back to the city and leave this area. Again, I hope not, because this is a great area. And finally, again, if there has been no development in this town, really major development in 30 years, 40 years, and you think about the technology that has been in place 30 years ago, DVDs and stuff like that, that's all becoming obsolete. I believe if we don't stay up, we don't develop, we don't do something with this village, eventually people are going to be unhappy and they're going to move out. That's just my personal. The younger people want the shops, they want to walk, they want to, visit, to be able to walk through a center district and visit coffee shops and visit places. So I think it's a great thing. Again, we have to deal with a lot of the issues. There are issues, parking, traffic. One of my concerns is I have young kids. They love to bike in the village. They bike all around. And especially now with COVID, they've done it more than ever. And I've seen Tate become a racetrack at night, and it's concerning. And, code enforcement, I'm not saying it's not there, but maybe we have to be a little bit stricter. Maybe we have to look at the speed limit and reduce that. All things that, I just like to throw out there. So,
Have you contacted the police department and mentioned your concerns about Tate Avenue and what times, is there like a specific time that we could have an officer, or you're just seeing it in general?
it's just random. Like
Okay.
you just see it random, just somebody flying down the road. And again, if the speed limit's 30, if you're doing 35 on that road, that is fast.
Yeah, it's a small road.
But try doing 25. Like, it's tough because it's an open road and it's very tough to do. The school districts try to do 15. You can't do 15. It's almost stopped. So, again, I have not contacted the police department because it hasn't been a steady, but my fear is more traffic flow, more people getting frustrated with, having to go through 9A. They just cut down Tate. So it's something to consider.
Sure. Good points. Yes.
Yeah. One comment, Harmon. You said young people like places where they could walk and go to coffee shops and stuff. I know at least one old person that likes that too.
Like, you see the whole Peekskill waterfront, and even in the center of Peekskill, it's revitalizing. And people are traveling from New York up to the Peekskill Brewery because they love the brewery up there. So, we don't have a direct train here, but if you can access it either through Lyft or Uber or, walking from Peekskill, that would be a great thing.
Yeah. I would also, by the way, say that there, your point about Blakely and direct and access into the village, that's something that's been, that is sort of being addressed. It's come up before. There is a sidewalk on Blakely, though it might need a little repair. And with the village getting some grant money, that sidewalk should soon be extended from Blakely along 9A, where that parking regulations went in effect. There's going to be a sidewalk added there that'll connect to the village to Tate. So that's, that we are sort of working on that connection. And maybe between now and next month's meeting, we can kind of re-examine the parcels along Blakely and give it a little more thought of if there's any advantage to including that in this. But I'm not sure I have an answer to that right now. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Marcus, do we have anyone else?
I think all hands have been answered.
Okay, and now
I have one more question, Marcus.
Sean wanted to come back as a citizen. Thank you, Sean. Yes.
Thanks.
Citizen Sean.
Thanks. I just want to remind everybody that the current code allows for mixed use as well as multifamily use. Okay, it's by a special permit. That's in the current code right now. There are approximately 20 to 25 properties right now that fall into that category that are multifamily use or multifamily with commercial in it. And not one of those properties, well, I shouldn't say not one, I'd say 80% of those properties do not meet the 40,000 square foot criteria or 20,000 square foot criteria, which is proposed. They have all gone through the special permitting process. They have all gone through the zoning process for variances, at least the ones that were built after 1955. The main issue with this legislation that you're proposing, with this overlay, is that it no longer requires a special use permit for sole residential construction. So everything everybody's talking about, walking to businesses, having coffee, going on the sidewalk, going to a park, if it is as of right use for only residential, it will only be the 2 apartment buildings, because you're basically talking about 2 lots of property that already meet the 40,000 square foot criteria. So they don't even have to get a special permit. They don't have to get a variance. They're already over 1 acre. So they can have sole use of residential property. That's the way the code is written. Look at the appendix. Look at the zoning map. Look at the tax map. So I think you're getting too global. This isn't the cure. This isn't the panacea for the best tax base in the world. This isn't a panacea. You're basically talking about allowing two or three developers, the right to build 2 apartment buildings. That's what you're basically talking about. Nobody has a problem with a taller building. Nobody has a problem with putting in a sidewalk or paving an extra 20% of your property. The problem is that this overlay district is being portrayed as a way to increase tax base through the combined use of residential and commercial. That combined use is already allowed. It's already allowed. So, we have to really focus on the reason that this overlay is being considered. And I have to say that it only came up when the property across the street from the church, which is over 40,000 square feet, was sold. Because I believe certain developers only want apartment buildings. They can get the most amount of money for their investment. If they use the commercial, which is better tax base than the pure residential, it's harder for them to manage. As you said, it's hard for businesses to come in, but the businesses are what support our tax base, not residential. I don't think any of our representatives, including Mr. Stolman, who even said that pure high-density residential may pay for itself. It may pay for itself. There's no facts or figures. These properties that are available right now for development already meet the zoning criteria, as do the other 20 to 25 properties that went through the process and are occupying those sites right now. It's already allowed. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that this is going to be better tax base. What it is, it's going to be better for a developer to put in 2 apartment buildings. That is basically it. That's basically it. So you should keep that into consideration. Now, you're not going to have other shops in there. You're not going to have this great big tax base. And nobody's even said how much money is it going to come in. How much? You don't know. You don't know. One of the reasons why there's only 2 properties or 3 properties available is because it has been beneficial for both the property owner and the village. It has already been developed, and it was developed a long time ago. There's only been maybe 6 or 7 over the last 15 years that have come in. The Carbone building, the building next to it, they came in within the last 20 years. So there has been development, and one of the reasons why there isn't a lot of development because we're already 95% incorporated. There isn't any properties that can benefit from it. The ones that can benefit from it right now are the ones that already meet the code requirements and are already allowed to have multifamily housing, just not at the density that would be able to create the maximum income potential for the developer, not the maximum income potential for the residents of the village, for the developer. It's easier to manage, easier to maintain, and you get the maximum cost benefit. One of the reasons why there's not a 4-story or 5-story building in the circle is because the developer told us that he could not make any money without having a 4.5, 5-story building. We said, we're sorry, you're not going to be able to do it. And he said, okay, well, I'll capitulate and take the recommendations of the planning board and of the residents of the village through the public hearing process. Public hearing process for special permits are extremely important because it takes into account the neighbors around it and takes in ideas that people didn't have before, the elected officials or the planning board members didn't have before. That is the reason why a special permit is required for these types of variances, because we don't know everything. The people who live next to it do know it. And there isn't one developer who has been prevented from getting what he initially wanted. That has not been a detraction from him. That is why almost every property is used. They find ways to do it. They find ways to make it beneficial to the taxpayer. They find ways to make it beneficial to their investors. So let's not lose focus. You're talking about a law that basically only affects 2 to 3 properties for development. All the other things of redevelopment, that's fine. Everybody has always gotten their variances. Everybody has always got their site plans, even though they've been below the 40,000 square feet, because we gave them a special permit through the process. Circumventing these processes has nothing but mistake written all over it. The faster you go, the more mistakes you make. And you only have one chance to build the building. Because once a developer puts in an apartment building, you're not going to say, oh, by the way, the bottom floor has to have 2 commercial spaces to help our tax base. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. And one other thing is that I don't know if a lot of the public actually knows about this meeting, okay? Because there is almost no public notification. In the newsletter, we put in public hearings for planning board applicants. We put in notification of public hearings for zoning board applicants. But something as important as changing the criteria for a commercial zone is not listed anyplace. We don't have, it wasn't up on the Facebook page. It's not on a rolling screen because we don't have a rolling screen. It's not in a newsletter. The only place you can find what is on the agenda is when the agenda is posted on the Village of Buchanan website. And that's only a few days before the meeting. So there's plenty of room in the newsletter to say, hey, get on such and such a time. We're going to talk about zoning changes or redistricting changes or overlay changes because they affect every resident. We make the notifications for neighbors, but for some reason this notification wasn't made. So hopefully we can put something in the newsletter or give some other type of notification before the next meeting because I'm not sure if a lot of the public would want to comment on it, but I'd like them at least to have the opportunity so people don't say, I wish I would have known, you know? That's all I have. Thanks. I'm sorry I took a little bit of time, but I've been running late.
It's fine. That's why we have public hearings. But, you know, you do make a good point, and I'm not hearing from the residents on the 9A corridor there, which concerns me, you know, so I'm not closing the public hearing tonight, so it's still going to give us an opportunity to look for more input from the public. There's obviously some things that have to be ironed out yet, but yes, I'm not sure if we have to, the properties that are affected, I don't know if we have to send a direct letter. And then
no, you don't have to. That's for special hearings and things like that. There's no reason to give direct letters, but just on a mass mailing, you know, we have the mechanism to reach every village resident, whether they read the newsletter or not. I always enjoyed it when I was on the planning board when certain members would tell me that, you know, I never knew, and I was able to pick up the newsletter and say, well, no, it's right here. It's been on your refrigerator for 2 months, and you know, you protect yourself that way, not by asking a village resident to go to the village website 3 days beforehand, you know, or 4 days beforehand, where they can't come down and get the documents because the draft documents are not listed on the website either. At least I wasn't able to find them. So when if you're going to rely on the public, on the notification process through a website, you should at least have the draft documents available a week before the meeting. I know you guys set your agenda at least a week or 2 weeks before the meeting. If you're going to have a public hearing, the public should be able to look at the documents. I know if they come down and stand outside and knock on the window, they might be able to read a piece of paper, but I'm not so sure that people would avail themselves to that, you know.
All right, good.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, we should make that draft document should be, there should be some kind of link where people could see that on our website or something, and we should make sure that it's in the newsletter. I mean, those are good points. Could I just comment on a couple of things? This does not only affect those 2 large properties, though they may have the biggest, might have the biggest effect on them. This is also a matter of streamlining the process to encourage development, and it is also meant for some of the smaller properties. We went with and right now the draft says that the minimum lot size to use this density or the prorated density would be 25,000 square feet. The last workshop Nick talked about
it's 20,000 now.
It's 20,000, but the draft that Marcus, when you sent out the draft, it still said 25,000. In the packet that we got, the packet I got still says 25,000.
I'll check on that.
Yeah, and that's also it's on. I mean, maybe it's changed somewhere, but both in the draft that we got with our meeting packet, as in the text, as well as on the On the bulk regulation charts, it's still showing 25. It needs to be amended in
I will
3 or 4
check that.
places.
Okay.
The third page.
And when we go to 20,000 square feet, which is just shy of half an acre is about 21 and change. So 20,000 square feet is just shy of half an acre. There are about at least 5 or 6 other properties, I believe, that meet that criteria. Some of them are underdeveloped properties. It includes a lot that, like Selix right now, is, his property is 0.6 acres. If somebody bought that in the future, that property comes into play.
My comments, Nick, were based on the vacant properties right now that are available to be developed.
There are
Not
2
the
large
ones that could
vacant
be
properties.
purchased, demolished,
Right.
and then redeveloped.
The triangle across from the hardware store falls within that 20,000 square feet, so it does affect him.
And he already had site plan approval for a mixed multi-use. He was granted that in around 2006, 2007, when I was on the planning board.
Whoever owns that now, it might want to do something else, just saying. There's also a 0.8 acre parcel that the village owns up on Blakely at 9A, that falls into play. There's a couple of private lots along the 9A corridor that currently have one house on them that are 0.6 acres. There's 2 of them. If those people decided to sell, a developer could, 0.6 acres means that you would, if the code allowed 10 units on an acre, 0.6 acres could have 6 units. So it's prorated, in other words. There are other lots that come into play, and the intent is to improve that corridor from one end to the other, and it could very well be that somebody with a plan to do something on those larger parcels is going to benefit the most right away, but it's not intended just for those parcels.
Well, Nick, I just want to let you know that every single person who has come before the zoning or planning board to change, to put in multifamily or mixed use, has never been denied. Okay? They haven't been denied. Even though they did not meet the 40,000 square foot criteria because they used a special permit process. Okay? The property, like you said, across from Buchanan Hardware, you also had the mixed use that was on the corner of Craft Lane and Albany Post Road. That was approved. Okay? The Village Circle, the building was approved. The Bob's Deli was approved. All of those were approved. The buildings, the Carbone building was approved. The building in between Carbone and the hardware store, that was approved. None of them met those original criteria, but because they went through the process and they were deemed not to be of a hazard or a detriment to the village residents, they were approved. Anybody who comes in with a reasonable plan, with reasonable use, they have gotten the permission to do it. I would challenge you to find one person who has been denied the right to develop their property along that corridor.
Sean,
They have all been granted approvals.
Sean, have they gotten variances?
Some of them have, absolutely.
Because you can't do it just with a special permit. You need a variance.
Absolutely.
And Sean,
It went through the process. The only thing you're circumventing on the zoning is the lot coverage, which should never be. Zoning issues shouldn't be planning issues.
And the setback.
Setback. Okay, setback.
Sean, just one question for you. The comments that you made this evening, will they be in the planning board's report?
Those are my personal comments. Some of them will be in the planning board report if the planning board agrees to it. I'm not speaking as a planning board member right now. I'm speaking as a citizen. The previous comments I made were as a planning board. So
Can we get your personal comments in writing?
my personal comment.
In writing?
I gave you 2 pages of them the last time.
It's a little hard to separate personal comments from planning board chair comments.
Well, the comments from the planning board will be signed by the planning board.
Comments gets a little confusing.
All right.
It's a little hard to address all the comments right now, but it would be good to look at them and respond.
Thanks. I'm not taking up any more of you guys' time. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, anyone else that would like to speak?
I would just like to add for the public hearing, I believe you all got the letter from Ralph Mastromonaco in favor of the overlay district, just so it's on the record.
Should we read that into the record, Cindy?
Sure. I represent as engineer for the Carbone family, owners of certain properties in the village of Buchanan. I have read over your village's proposal for the overlay district and believe the change will provide needed flexibility in relation to property uses. The change, if adopted, would allow my client to use his property on Albany Post Road in a more efficient manner with less disturbance of the site than under the current code. It is hoped that the village would approve of the overlay district submitted by Ralph G. Mastromonaco.
What's the date on that?
January 5, 2021.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's today.
That is right.
Marcus, Marcus, I see your portrait there. Are you, okay, you coming back now?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Marcus. The question about taxes. What kind of way do we have to compare what the tax ratings are for various types of buildings? Because, you know, that's been raised a couple of times, and I think that's very important that we know that. You know, I've heard different things that, you know, people are saying that you're going to get more tax from commercial properties. I've heard in the past that you get more from residential. Is there some way we can, we could, you know, get a decent enough sample to actually understand whether there is a difference and how much money we might get on different things? I mean, is there any way to do an assessment of what to project on a hypothetical building, let's say, you know, 6 townhouses on an acre, or is there any way for us to project? I mean, we do have a parcel on 9A. I think I'm not sure if it's 5 or 6 townhouses. The one that's right behind Gallon Measure there. You know, so maybe using whatever properties we have in the village and what we take in taxes. You know, is there some way to get a comparison and project?
Nick, I can talk to the assessor, but it gets complicated because I don't know if everybody knows. After a property is constructed, everything's based on construction costs. But then after it's built, for example, a commercial property is based on an income approach. So if a business makes a lot of money, then normally they don't ask for reassessment. But everybody knows about tax certiorari's. That's based on the income approach. So if person say, I have a vacant storefront, or my rent income isn't enough to cover my expenses, then you got tax certiorari's to have to deal with, and the property on the commercial might be less than a residential. So it's all based on the economy as well, and what the commercial space rent would be on that spot. What the biggest difference would be, that I've heard the argument, is that on a commercial spot you provide less services. For example, you don't have kids in school, so people say that you wind up being ahead, especially school districts, but they're not providing any services to a commercial spot. That's the biggest argument I've heard for the benefit of a commercial spot. But if we have a square footage of a commercial building, the first thing the assessor is going to say is, I need to know what the rental income is going to be, what the expenses are going to be. A Starbucks is going to pay more taxes than a mom and pop coffee house. So I don't know how we're going to determine that kind of difference between the two. But I think the biggest difference is that if a commercial spot, a municipality might provide more services because there's more garbage, but the school taxes are less because there are no school children in a commercial spot. So that's my thinking of it. David, do you agree? Do you have any other comments on that?
I agree entirely with what you said. I guess perhaps the best we could do is if we knew, the best we could do, I think, is to compare known entities that exist in the village and do the best we can doing some sort of comparison.
So, for example, on the Griffin property, there was a proposal that we spoke about. We know what the potential income might be on that one, but again, it'll be commercial. So we know what the initial taxes would be because they're based on construction, but after that, it's going to be based on renter income. So we compare a building like that compared to a same kind of square footage of a commercial spot, and I can ask the assessor to give me what the numbers would be for the first year, but all bets are off on the second year because then commercial is all based on income approach. So I just want to make sure, hopefully people understand the difference between commercial and residential.
Any other comments? We have 10 other items on the agenda yet, and we're going to leave this open so we can continue this conversation. So if there's nobody else this evening, I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing until the February meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, the next is a resolution scheduling a public hearing overriding the New York State property tax.
Night all. Happy New Year.
Right.
Yeah. Good night. Thanks, David.
Right, thanks. Okay, so this is something we do every year. Whereas under this law, the total amount to be raised through property taxes charged on the municipality's taxable assessed value of property will be capped at 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less with some exceptions. Whereas the state legislation provides for local governments to override the cap to protect the village from unforeseen financial circumstances. Well, we're kind of in the financial circumstances now. Whereas state legislation requires that in the event that an override is necessary, the law enabling it must already have been adopted by the Board of Trustees. And whereas local law introductory number 1 of 2021 has been drafted to override the property tax cap law enacted by the state legislature if necessary. With what we're dealing with, it's going to be necessary. Now, therefore, be resolved that the village board will conduct a public hearing at the village municipal building on February 2nd, 2021 at 7:30 for the purpose of taking public comment on and giving due consideration to the enactment of a local law overriding the 2% property tax cap law enacted by the state legislature. And be it further resolved that a copy of said local law is available at the village clerk's office for public inspection during regular business hours. And be it further resolved that the village clerk be and hereby is authorized and directed to publish notice of said public hearing in the official newspaper. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I got a
Who made the
second.
motion? Is that Dwayne?
Yeah.
So I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is something else we do every year. This is resolution stating polling places and hours for the next village election. The next village election will be held on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021, as of now. We remember last year the election was changed from March to another date to finally in September. But as of now, it's March 16th. Whereas according to New York State election law, 15-104 sub 3, the Board of Trustees of the village shall adopt a resolution which states the polling place in each election district and the hours during which the polls shall be open. Now, be it therefore resolved that the polling places for the next general election for District 1 and 2 are located in the community room on the second floor of the municipal building, 236 Tate Avenue, Buchanan, New York. And be it further resolved that the hours which polls shall be open will be between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the next thing is the resolution authorizing the establishment of a law enforcement advisory panel and to appoint members this evening. And this is, I'm going to read this so it gives some background. Whereas the governor has enacted Executive Order 203 entitled the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative and has instructed municipalities with police forces to form their own local plans for reform. Whereas pursuant to Executive Order 203, each local government entity, including the village, which has a police agency operating with police officers as defined under 1.20 of the Criminal Procedure Law, must adopt a policing reform plan after performing a collaborative review of the needs of the community served by its police agency and evaluate the department's current policies and practices to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color and promote trust, fairness, and legitimacy legitimacy. Okay, I'm getting tired. And develop a program. Whereas the Village of Buchanan Board has its own police department, and whereas the Village of Buchanan desires to participate in the collaborative by forming a panel and submitting comments to the state. Whereas the purpose of the program shall be as follows: to review the needs of the community served by its police agency, evaluate the relevant policies and practices of the department, identify standards and strategies that foster trust, fairness, transparency, accountability, and legitimacy, confirm or establish policies that allow police to perform their duties effectively and safely, involve stakeholders and community members in listening sessions and elicit input from the public, develop policy recommendations resulting from this review, offer a plan for public comment, present the plan to the local legislative body to ratify or adopt it, and certify adoption of the plan to the state budget director on or before April 2021. So we are behind on this. So there's some work that needs to be done in the next couple of months. I have appointed Trustee Jackson as the chairman of this committee. So there's some work, like I said, and there might be more meetings. There might be several meetings in January and February because this has to be adopted by April 1st. So let me now read the members that will be appointed. And the first is, there's 7 people: James Ferguson, Jeremy Basso, Awilda Baez, James Lent, Daniel, and please forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Cheladuar, I'm sorry, Diane Tangen, and Linda Wiley. Now, therefore, be resolved that the village board does hereby establish the Buchanan Law Enforcement Advisory.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've added Paul Matthews.
Okay, I saw him as an alternate, but he will be on the panel?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. Mm-hmm. So, and including also Paul Matthews, so that will be 8 members, plus Trustee Jackson, plus the police chief, the interim police chief, and
Trustee Zachary.
Trustee Zachary. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, it's the Buchanan Law Enforcement Advisory Panel, LEAP, in the spirit of the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. So I'm going to do a motion. I'm going to leave a moment also for a question or comment. On a motion? Second?
Second.
On a motion? I'm sorry. On a comment, question? Sorry. Dwayne, did you want to say something?
No, we've outlined at least a beginning date right now, January 11th. We've notified the panel people who are going to be on the panel, and we're going to move forward. We've got 2 months to get it in place, and we're looking toward, I believe it was March 8th to be able to have it all finalized.
So that we could vote at the Marcus. This has
have a public hearing. I think you have to schedule a public hearing as well.
Okay, so what we were wondering is if we could include that in the March 23rd workshop. Right. Otherwise, we'd have to have a special meeting before the end of March because this has to be submitted April 1st.
Yeah, so the idea would be at the February meeting, you'll call for the public hearing for the March workshop and have the public hearing on the March workshop and hopefully close and then adopt it.
Either that or we have to have a special meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And we did go, Dwayne, we and I and the police chief talked about having meetings every other Monday, starting this coming Monday. I think we still need to notify everybody and make sure we have reasonable availability.
Yep.
For Monday evenings at 7:00.
Yes, 7, 8:30.
We will reach out to the people that were appointed, or maybe Marcus has done that already. I'm not sure.
Tonight, then you'll contact them.
Yeah, the email will be going out tonight after this meeting, or tomorrow morning. Yes.
No, take a break and come back fresh in the morning, Marcus.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just would like to thank all the folks that emailed us to signal their wanting to participate, and we appreciate your involvement and your caring about the village of Buchanan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It was quite of a nice list of people that were interested in becoming involved. So I think
Yeah, we did get a lot of good people interested. And by the way, these are required to be public meetings, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
and so that they will be advertised. So anybody that expressed interest but did not get selected for the committee is welcome to listen in as a member of the public, and there will be opportunities for the public to comment.
Yeah.
all right. I did the motion on a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A motion. Okay, I'm going to make a motion for the shared service agreement with the city of Peekskill regarding police services. This.
Teresa, I'm sorry, you had the public hearing for the 211?
Oh my God, I
Chapter?
went right over that. Thank you. I'm sorry. I went right over that. Okay, so I'm going to call for a motion for a public hearing amending chapter 211 entitled Zoning to the Code of the Village of Buchanan. Would Nick or Stephanie like to comment on this? We're setting the public hearing this evening, so that will be on February 3rd, the public hearing. Any comments at this time?
I don't know.
No, this is the public hearing.
You're opening the public hearing tonight.
No, it says on mine
Yes.
to
I sent you a new one.
That I don't have. Okay, so
Sorry about that.
apologize. So
Yeah.
No, sorry about that.
that's okay. That's okay. That was a trick question. I got it. All right. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to make a motion to open the public hearing amending chapter 211 entitled Zoning to the Code of the Village of Buchanan. On a motion.
So moved.
So,
Second?
Second.
Good, I got a second. All in favor? I know it's been
Aye.
a long meeting.
Aye.
Okay. So now, Nick or Stephanie, would you like to comment on this, at the public hearing on this?
I think Stephanie would.
Thanks, Nick. You're always the gentleman. Okay, what we did here, as we know, and you all have a copy of it, is we're amending a specific section of the chapter 11. And the reason this came about is because Nick, Trustee Zachary, found a section of the code that was inconsistent with another section. So basically what we've done is there was a section of the code that allowed for a vacant property situated between two developed properties whose front yard was less than the setback to allow that person in the middle to develop a property. So you build a house and you can kind of automatically have a setback that's equal to the one furthest away, left or right to you. So let's say you're supposed to have a 30-foot setback front yard, right? And the property to your left has a 10-foot front yard setback and the next one has a 15-foot. You could, pursuant to our code, come in and build a property 15 feet back instead of 30 because the property to one of your sides allowed that. Anyway, but we were not allowing that for developed properties. And so, somebody came in with an application and it came to our attention that, if that person decided to bulldoze his house and start from scratch, he could actually have what he was looking for, which was 15 feet. And so what we did was tried to make the code more consistent. I think you all have what I sent. We amended 211-17A by adding a 1 and a 2 and a 3. And then we also amended 211-37, referencing back to the 211-17A 1, 2, and 3, just so when the zoning board sort of jumped into this, they'd have an easy reference back to what the changes were. And finally, we added definitions for a fence and a wall, because there's been some confusion with prior village officials who didn't quite know the difference, and it wasn't really clear. So we wanted to make it clearer. And that's basically what you have, and that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah, there are some typical side yard variance required in the village is 10 feet. but this requires, for a house expanding to make sure that we're not negatively impacting the neighboring properties. This requires that there be a total of 30 feet between the two buildings, which means one of the buildings can be 10 feet, but then the other one has to be 20 feet from the sideline, a total of 30. And I believe we wrote into this something giving the zoning board discretion to grant up to a 20% variance. 20% variance on 30 feet means going to 24 feet. 20% of 30 is 6. So if you can give a 6-foot variance on a 30-foot requirement, you can reduce it a bit because situations are going to vary, and you need a little leeway in there. So this might help. This might help a certain number of properties around the village, pre-existing older homes that are small and they need a little more room. It might be beneficial to them. It won't apply to everybody, because you have certain side yard numbers that you have to have, and also that you can build. The front yard setback has to be the greater of the two properties to your left and right, with a minimum of 10 feet. So even if you have two properties on your left and right that are 5 foot from the property line, which does occasionally happen on pre-existing buildings, any new work still has to be 10 feet minimum. You can't go to 5 feet. That's pretty much it. Makes it more consistent with what was, as Stephanie said, with what was already allowed on a vacant lot between two existing buildings.
Any other comments from board members? Okay. Public hearing, so I'm going to open it up. Does anybody out there in Zoom land have any comments?
Zoom land.
Teresa, I do not see any hands being raised.
No phone calls.
Okay, thanks. All right, so are we ready to vote on this? Yes, we are. Okay. If there's no other comments or questions, on a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have to, we've closed the public hearing, so now we have to vote on amending it. I have the original, I'm so sorry. I have the original agenda, that's why I'm.
Okay, so it's just a resolution to adopt the local law number 1,
Amending chapter
211, yes.
To the code of the village of Buchanan.
Yes.
Thank you, Cindy. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, now I can go on to the shared service agreement with the city of Peekskill?
There we go. Yeah.
All right, good, perfect. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for the shared service agreement with the city of Peekskill regarding police services.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is something we do every year. We do have a service agreement with the city of Peekskill. Marcus, would you like to share with us what those different services are?
Sure, is the dispatching, 911 calling. We've had this agreement for a number of years. It's actually a 5-year agreement. I don't know when it first started, but it's been renewed every 5 years. Right now, the current amount for the 2021 year will be $9,100, and it goes up $200 every year for 5 years. And as far as the police department recommends we share it, I actually agreed to it. When Eric Johansson was here, he did recommend that the board did approve it. It just, we overlooked it for the last couple of months, and we would like to move forward and continue the agreement.
Because one of the things also, if our officers aren't available, if someone calls a police officer, it'll automatically go into the city of Peekskill, and then, they do what they need to do, whether they try to contact our officer or we have mutual aid also, so.
That's correct.
Okay.
Marcus, I have it as 9,300.
That's for the 21 year, correct?
21 year, yeah.
Yep, 21. I'm sorry, for the 20 year was 9,100. Correct.
Okay. All right. so we did a motion, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So are we going on now to the replacement of streetlights? So I'm on the same page with.
There we go. Yep, everything else is fine.
Okay. Okay, so a motion to authorize the purchase of 5 replacement streetlights and for the funds to be used from the capital fund general projects account. Let's talk about this because I was out with trustee Funchin, trustee Jackson, and also trustee Pasquale. And we looked at the lights in the circle area and the post office lot that needed to be replaced. So they were I forgot, they were like almost $3,000 a piece for the decorative lights and the lighting to be replaced. And
the exact amount is $3,352.50 each.
Okay.
That includes installation.
Okay. Okay. So any comments from the board before I make a motion to vote on this? No?
I think we understood that they had been down for some time for various reasons.
Right.
And it does affect the safety of making that turn and then providing lighting on dark road. So it needs to be replaced.
Okay, good. So on a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next is consider a motion to provide Cynthia Kempter with an increase of salary of $10,000 effective January 6, 2021. What I first want to say is, we definitely appreciate everything that Cindy does. She's a hard worker. And she works a lot of hours for the village. She does a good job for the village as our village clerk, and she's, the front line in the village office. But I myself, in good conscience, I can't vote for this raise, considering our finances and other things. So I just want to let you know I'll be voting no, and I've already spoken to Cindy what my thoughts were on this. So I'm going to make the motion. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass. Okay, we're going to make a motion to hire Matt Mallory as a labor contingent on passing all hiring requirements of the village. There was a position that was open. Several people were interviewed, and Matt was chosen. So on a motion,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I just have one question. Marcus, on the other candidate, is it wrong or, let me just put it out there. If we're going to have Timmy Donahue, if somebody's retiring, let's say in the next, if that's the rumor, okay, is there any way of contacting the gentleman and saying, like, no, we're going to hold on to your resume. We like you, but we can only have one position now?
Just to let you know, I contacted I know it was a tough decision, and it was 2 finalists that the board interviewed, and I liked them both. And Matt was stood out a little bit more. But the second gentleman, I told them that if there is a vacancy that comes about in the next couple of months, that the village board would like to entertain talking to you again at that point if you're still interested. So he was very excited about that possibility.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, and Matt was somebody that has worked for us over the summer months before?
I can let Bob explain that, but he worked for us about 4 or 5 years ago. In the summer, I can let Bob explain that, but he also was a Marine for 4 years, served our military in Afghanistan and Iraq for 4 years. He returned back home, and he's looking for a full-time job, so it'll be great to have an ex-Marine who serves our country to have a job now. But Bob can talk to you about what he did for Bob 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Bob on? Okay, Bob's on.
Still awake?
No, we're here. We're tough. We can do this.
quite a few years ago for a couple seasons during leaf season in the summer. He's going to be a great addition to the staff down in the garage.
All right,
Yes,
good.
thank you.
All right. Did the motion, second, all in favor, aye?
We did that.
Yeah, we did that, thank you. I'm just trying to keep on track here. So the next is a motion to accept the gift in the amount of $25,000 from Entergy for Buchanan Day. And I will, this is something, fortunately, I've been able to, for many years now, I'm trying to think how many years, but many years now, Entergy has a grant program, and I've applied for it all these years, and we've been fortunate to get that. So whenever we have Buchanan Day, it's not coming out of the taxpayer dollars. It's been the Entergy money. I have been told by Entergy, but I have to get it documented, that this money could also be used for any COVID-related expenses, and it could also be used for other events. So just like when we just had our Christmas event, that could be also used for that, but I will get further clarification on that. So,
Can I make one comment there?
sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the Buchanan Day is only runs between 4,000 and 6,000, I think. I mean, this is way above it, so that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Have it.
We must think for the future, mustn't we?
Yes. Very good.
So yes.
So if we made a motion to change it to 250,000, would they give us that?
Well, we could try. I don't think it'll happen.
Second.
Yeah. So yes, so this is great that we have this. There are going to be discussions going forward if Buchanan Day is the direction we need to take. We're not getting the attendance we used to get, so we'll have some conversations, but we will have some type of event, and let's see, what we can do to get the residents together.
Yeah. Is there a time frame on this money? Because COVID could prevent us from having any events for now, and hopefully it'd be nice if things were great by September, but
yeah, who knows? Who knows?
So we're not limited in terms of the time.
That gets deposited into our account, and that's ours to use. So
and it'll be set aside for events or COVID-related things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. On a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next one is we're not ready to do this today, okay?
Mhm.
But I did want to let the public know that we've had a joint meeting with the fire department, and they are in need of some equipment, and we have been saving. We have a special account for that. So we've talked about the type of equipment that they need. So within the next couple of months, within a month, whenever we can get everything lined up here, we will be purchasing 2 new vehicles for the fire department. Marcus, did you want to comment further on that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, some members of the fire department is on the line as well. I can put them in just to allow them to speak as well. So I'm going to move them over to our panelists. Okay, Andy and Bob, I just made you panelists as well. So if there's anything you would like to add. So Andy and Bob, you can unmute yourselves and also show your video if you like.
And Andy and Bob, also I understand, and I'm sorry, I understand the piece of equipment you were looking at was sold.
Yes, I checked on the rescue truck, made a phone call today actually, and that vehicle is no longer available.
Okay.
So the idea is, just to give everybody an update, I had another conversation with Andy today, is that we'll go out to a formal bid. We'll get specifications together, go to formal bid. The minimum requirement on the state law is 5 days. Then we can open up the bids. Hopefully the manufacturer that's building the pumper will respond with a reasonable number. The board, I would recommend maybe the board have a special meeting just to get the time moving faster and not lose that opportunity. If the board is willing to do that, award the bid, and then we can actually go and issue the 25% down payment for the truck and hold the truck until it's constructed in sometime in about May, if that's correct, Andy.
That is correct, yes.
Now I'm sorry, and the rescue truck, Andy, you say the truck that you want could be produced. You said September of this year or September of next year?
This year,
Okay.
third quarter of this year.
So the idea with me, we'll go out to bid for both. If that's agreeable to Andy as well, go out to bid for both, get responses for both, see if the numbers hold to what we've been talking about, and then the village board, if they want to, is to award the bid for both, or have that conversation when we actually receive the bids.
I just had a question. I'm getting confused with all this stuff. You got, I'm asking Andy here a question. You have two pumpers, is that correct right now? And you have a rescue truck. Three pieces of equipment?
We have two pumpers, yes, and a rescue truck. What we're doing is we're replacing the 1998.
Right,
smaller pumper.
I heard before, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but you said that one of them is not working at all? Is that correct?
It is working. We've had mechanical problems with it. At the present time, it is working. It's back in service.
But Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, it actually failed in response to a call, and it just died on you, correct?
It's died a bunch of times. We've actually gone through two repair shops to try to fix it. We finally have it at this moment working, but there's no guarantee that it's going to stay, and we've had electrical problems in the past with it.
But so just pardon my ignorance here, but what happens if the one that is working, if that breaks down, what do we do? You got, is there some sort of agreement with Montrose and or Plank?
Correct. We would go to mutual aid automatically if that happened. But at the present time, the 91 that we have is operating okay. The problem is that it's 91, and we're replacing that. We're keeping that one,
Right.
and getting a new pumper.
Okay.
Hey, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah, just for the public who are listening on the line, can you state your whole name and your position with the fire department?
Sure. My name is Andrew Roush. I live at 202 Rockledge Avenue, and I am the first assistant chief of Buchanan Engine Company.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steph.
Who do you have bid specs? I mean, how are we going out to bid? What are we going out to bid for? And based on what?
We have the specs on the rescue truck right now. We're currently getting the specs on the engine and the pumper.
Great. Okay, thanks. Because Marcus, you're talking about a 5-day bid, so I was just concerned that we have some specs that we're actually sending out for bid.
Yeah, the idea would be get the specs together, or get a bid specification together, make sure the fire department's okay with it. Stephanie, if you don't mind, maybe take a quick look at it just to make sure you're okay with it, and then we'll get it out and published, and then give a 5-day turnaround, and then give the board time to review it, and maybe call for a special meeting to award the bid if everybody's okay with the number.
So may I ask a question? The state law requires that we get 3 bids?
No. When you go to public bid, there is no number of how many bids you're required to get. You can get 1 or you can get 20, and you can award the bid to whoever you want, as long as the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay. Andy, how many conceivable bids can we get? I don't imagine there's fire truck builders on every corner.
No, there's not. There are a few, however. Whether or not, whether or not they're going to bid on it is another thing, because we do have a height constraint.
Correct.
As well as the one that we were looking at was a demo. So it depends on how many manufacturers actually have demos or stock units out there.
Okay. But we're pretty sure we'll at least get 1 bid.
Yeah.
I mean,
We hope.
We hope. Yes.
All right. So, all right. Any other comments or discussion on that? Anybody from the fire department? And, this is, so everybody understands this is taxpayer dollars. We have to go through a bidding process. So that's what we're gonna do going forward, and we're working on it.
All right, Andy and Bob, thank you so much for waiting, and Andy, thanks for having a conversation with me today and trying to get everything updated. Thank you.
Been a
Happy New
long
Year.
meeting, sorry.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, guys.
We made you sit through all that other stuff, but it is very entertaining, isn't it?
No, no, it's not. Hey, Bob,
And
Yes.
toothpicks
it's
in
Stephanie,
it.
can you give me a call tomorrow?
Sure,
Thank you.
Good.
no problem.
Okay, so
Thanks, Andy.
information
No problem.
from officers and departments. Justice Court reports, November 2020, the amounts are 4,436, and the other is 1,254. That's received and filed. Police report, November 2020. Just give you moving summonses 42, total calls 151, parking summonses 5. Received and filed. Our highway department November 2020 report, received and filed. Village wastewater monthly report for November 2020, and just so people understand, treated wastewater 7,844,000 gallons. So if you're ever wondering how much water gets treated, you know. Sludge removal 97,500 gallons. Let's see, planning board minutes, November 19th, 2020, received and filed. Zoning board minutes, November 12th, 2020, received and filed. Stephanie, attorney's report.
Okay, so we have a couple of applicants in front of planning and zoning again. Some of them are continuations, so that's good. It's good to see some more action. And most importantly, as people know, and as I'm thrilled about for you community folks, the governor signed those bills into law, which opens the way, hopefully, for some revenue to bring back the loss of the Indian Point revenue. And so I just wanted to thank everybody out there who might be listening and this board for all your work, for signing the petition.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that they work. You know, you gather together and you get behind a cause. And so, you know, we've got some other opportunities now.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I really have is for executive session, so.
Okay, and Stephanie, I'm going to mention that too, but while we're speaking about it, getting this approved was not a slam dunk. This was a long process. This took several years. This took educating legislators what it was about. I'm just going to quickly say what those 3 laws were. One was the labor protections for our labor force, these are all important. The other was allowing the village to do a pilot if we wanted to do a pilot. It gave us the opportunity to do a pilot with a closed nuclear power plant. But the big one was allowing us to tax the spent fuel that's located on the property. So we are the first in the country. We put the Village of Buchanan on the map again. So I have to thank Santila Parkham for their support and for introducing this. This was just totally crazy how this all went on. It was New Year's Eve, believe it or not, and I'm texting back and forth to Peter Harkham, and he was telling me the status of where it was, if the governor was signing it, what was going on. So I'm saying to myself, oh my God, it's New Year's Eve, and I'm texting about this. But fortunately, he did sign it. Huge win for the village. But I will tell you, one of the things, kind of last minute, we thought about something and we're like, oh my God, do these people really understand what a spent fuel cask is? Do they understand? Like, not everybody there's only a couple communities within the state. So not everybody's interested in passing this legislation. So it was the night before. I had Marcus get a picture of the cask with a man standing next to it, because it kind of gives you how big these casks are, how wide they are.
Yeah, and you get the smallest man you could find too to make the cast look bigger.
So the night before, I emailed all the state assembly with a letter with that picture explaining this is what this is, this is how important this is to our community. Same thing to the Senate, same thing's happened there. Stephanie, Marcus, and I met with Sandy Galiff's staff, and you could see that they weren't completely understanding. Like, the original legislation that was out 1 or 2 years ago was not what we needed to address. So I have to thank Stephanie, and I give her credit for this. She actually wrote the legislation for this. It was not Harkham's legislative or Galiff's legislative people. It was actually our Stephanie that wrote that legislation. So Stephanie, I thank you. You know, it was a huge education process for all of the staff, but it worked like a charm. It was spot on. So thank you. Perfect. We had Marcus running the whole petition thing and making that happen. And, you know, that's a crazy process too, but putting that out there, working on that. I think, Marcus, we got over 2,000 signatures, which certainly helped getting this passed. The governor saw that the community was behind this. So that was a big win for us. I can't tell you how happy I am. It was a very hard fought battle, but it's what we needed. So like I said, we're first in the country with that. So I'm sorry. Since Stephanie was talking about that, I figured let's go into that, but we will still continue. We don't know. I know Marcus, Stephanie, and a few other people will be meeting to figure out the taxation of that, how that works. So there's work to do with that. There's a lot going on. So I can't give you a number what that is, but anything helps. So it's a good thing, and we're still going to go forward with the Stranded Act that is moving along. So for the people that said there's no way in hell that the state legislation would get passed, it did. So never say never. You don't know, but you have to try. You have to try everything. So, and in saying that also, we didn't just hit the Powerball or the lottery. This is some money for us. Okay, this is not $3 million, but this is some money for us. So I just want the board to keep in mind, we are losing another 30% from Unit 2 and the first 30% hit from Unit 3. So we're still in a tough financial situation. This is great that we can recoup some of that money, but you know, we still have to be very, very careful with our finances. It's like I said, we didn't hit the Powerball. So, and until that happens, but we are going to talk, right, Marcus, at our next workshop. We have our financial people coming in with the audits. So we are going to be discussing finances at that meeting. They will give us the audit information, and then we can go further and discuss some more financial, and we'll be rolling into our next budget very quickly after that, because our budget has to be approved by May 1st. And that brings us into our next thing, the cessation fund.
Yep.
So Marcus has been in touch, speaking with people about the cessation fund. I have been speaking to people in the Public Service Commission. So we're all on top of this. We're working hard. We're looking for money, but I don't want to spend money foolishly either. So I just want to be real here and be a realist. So that's being worked on. There'll be more discussions going forward. We potentially have an opportunity to have cessation money this year, and it could potentially be paid out on October 1st, but more to come on that. I'm sorry, I just went off on that because Stephanie led into it. So
Sorry.
no, that's fine. Big win for the village. I'm very happy about it. Marcus, I'm sorry, it was your turn.
No problem at all. So I wish I had better news. Route 9A, the sidewalks, that's still in the state level. Everything's been submitted. I know you wanted to ask for that. That's still pending. Same as the pavilion. Everything's been provided to the state. I haven't heard anything back. I keep sending emails. Still working on it. So those two grants are still working. The good news, they haven't told us they've taken it away, but they haven't told us when it's going to be released, when and if it's going to be released. So those two items are still pending. Just want to let everybody know the Con Edison, they're going to be putting a new gas main on Broadway from Welcher Avenue of Peekskill coming on Broadway onto up to Blakely Avenue. This is a PSC requirement of them replacing the cast iron pipe with the plastic pipe. So they'll be working on that. They're going to be working on the westerly side of the road. So you'll see construction there taking on pretty soon.
On Broadway?
On Broadway.
Not on 9A.
No, Broadway. Broadway.
You know they dig up after they.
Because you said from Welcher.
It's from Welcher Avenue to Blakely Avenue.
Okay.
So they're going to be
Welcher does.
No, it's Broadway, right from in front of Lens.
Welcher does.
In front of Lens Cove. So
yeah, Broadway. It's
Broadway to
of what they were doing in front of Entergy.
Yeah, so right where the park is, from the Peekskill border all the way to Blakely Avenue.
Oh, that's from Louisa Street.
Louisa Street. So they're going to be digging that up. So they're going to be starting pretty soon, and then they're going to do a final repair, a final patch in the springtime when the plants are open again. So we are in discussions with Con Edison to see if, since that's about the same time we're going to do our own work, would we want to, will Con Edison give us the money to do the work ourselves, and that way we have our own contractor versus Con Edison contractor. So just an option we're looking at. We've done that in the past. So I'll get back to you as soon as we find out if that's a possibility. That road, since a lot of truck traffic, we asked for super pave. They use K-Crete to do the patch underneath, and we want super pave on top. Con Edison seemed to be agreeable to everything we've been asking. So that's moving forward with that. DEC, the good news, the DEC with the plant and the I&I requirement on the consent order, they've approved our plan from George Palmer's Han Engineering provided. They expect us to spend a certain amount of money every year on the I&I, doing cameras, doing repairs.
What's I&I?
Infiltrate. So
Yep.
we're talking about the wastewater plant. And
Correct.
you need to cut down the inflow of unnecessary water, like groundwater.
Yeah,
Correct.
I kind of suck at acronyms, so I just had to get that clarified.
Yeah, inflow, infiltration. So any pipes that are cracked, they don't want groundwater to get into it, and we don't want sewer water to get out of it. So the sewer system is supposed to be a sealed system.
Yes.
So they wanted to do more cameras of the rest of the pipes. We try to hit the bigger areas. So and we made them happy. So they wanted to continue doing that, but they still are mandating that we change the filter, the plant itself. So we're trying to get that at what the timeline of that would be. And also there are state grants available called the WQIP grants. They'll fund up to 75% of construction costs to do that work. The problem is right now, due to the COVID, most of the state grants, any new grant applications or new grants have been frozen. So we don't know when that's going to be available.
Well, not to mention that they're $15 billion in the hole. So
Correct.
I'm not thinking grant money this year is going to be flowing like wine.
Correct. So I'm hoping the DEC gives us more time to make the change to the plant, but that will be a couple $1 million to change that. So hopefully they'll give us time to. So the plant is working. We don't have any sewage backups. It's not overflowing. So hopefully it'll give us enough time till the grant applications become available again, so we can pay for that. But the good news is that we've met the consent order requirements, and we're not a target of the DEC anymore. So that's the good news. I wanted to let you know. Also, we got an update from our pool consultant that he got approval from the Department of Health that we can run the big pool if we wish to open the pool in the springtime without opening the kiddie pool, and the Department of Health doesn't have an issue with that. But that's where the issue is, and Bob is on the line too. Every time we run both, that's when the problem comes up. So if it's okay to not run the kiddie pool, we can probably run the big pool. So Andy, who was our consultant, took a while to get that approved from the DEC, from the Department of Health, and they're okay for us running that way in the spring or the summer if we decide to open the pool. And he should be providing us with some estimates in the next month or so. We could give you some options that we discussed, and then we could talk about what options we want to be. That's the update I got from Andy. Bob, did you get any more communication with Andy anyway? Because I know you met with him or discussed with him.
No, I haven't heard from him. I tried calling him yesterday, and he hasn't called me back.
Okay, all right. So that's the update for the pool and the EC, which was good news, and that's all I have for tonight.
Lots of things going on here in the Village of Buchanan in the VOB. Okay. Okay, so as everyone knows, the COVID is, there's an uptick in our community. There's an uptick all over. We, as of yesterday, I think we were at 35 active cases within a 2-week period. We're seeing 2 or 3 a day. Today, there was only one person that we saw that had been confirmed test positive. So please, everyone, follow the CDC guidelines. Wear your mask. You know, we've been saying this for a long time. We don't want to see anybody get sick, and we all want to see all of us get through this. On to the Christmas decoration contest. The first prize was on 182 4th Street, was most festive. The winner of the tree was donated by Buchanan Home Center, and they've always been good. Every year they donate a Christmas tree. And the number 1 person also got a gift card. The second prize was for Valerie Court, the most festive. 148 Seward was the cutest. 250 Westchester Avenue, they had 7 snowmen. They also got a gift card. All these were gift cards. 176 Tate Avenue, brightest display. 225 Ketchum Avenue, most unique. 117 Burke Court, best blow-ups. And honorable mention, 121 Burke Court, festive. 225 Craft Lane, most candy canes. And 171 First Street, the Peanuts Gang. So I'd like to just thank the judges, Dylan Laker, thank you, did a great job, and also our Nancy Bayer from the Recreation Department. And then I have a really nice letter I want everyone to read. And I don't know, is Tom Hall, are you on with us? So what happens every year, we have Fred Cook Company. They clean our catch basins in the spring. This year, they're way ahead of the Westchester County Health Department because in the spring, the County Health Department drops the anti-mosquito larva in there, and we've had instances where the catch basins were cleaned after they dropped it in. So their Cook is in there much earlier. So they're out cleaning the catch basins, and also the Cook cleans takes our sludge removal. So I had gotten, we had been sent this email, and it's Heroes. So here it is. Earlier today, and this is to Brian Cook. Earlier today, 2 of your professionals came to the aid of my wife and mother-in-law, who fell right outside her home on Rockledge Avenue in Buchanan. Thank God she wasn't injured. I believe this was due to the quick response and aid by your team members. Please pass along my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to these 2 wonderful gentlemen for their help and caring attitude. Gratefully, Tom Hall. And you know what? I saw this email, that just made my day. This letter made my day. It's so nice to see strangers coming together to help people with everything going on in the world, with all the anger and all the craziness going on. It was so nice to see somebody come to help 2 of our residents. And so those 2 gentlemen who work for Cook are Tyrone Majors and Jack Travis. So thank you, you guys. Great job. Thank you for helping our residents, and thank you for taking care of 2 of our residents. Much appreciated.
And Teresa, Mr. Hall is on the line too. If you want him to say anything.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Let me put him on.
Are you there?
Yeah, Mr. Hall, you can unmute yourself and turn on your video if you wish.
I'm here.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for that letter. That was, I told you, like I said, it just made my day when I saw that. How is your wife and your mother-in-law doing well?
Yeah, they're fine. Thank you very much. And again, those gentlemen were just, it's amazing when you think about, like I said to you earlier, I think I sent you another email. The fact that people, especially what's going on in the world today, that they would take the time to go out of their way. They literally were down the road. They saw it. They responded immediately. It just really touched my heart. So again, I'm very grateful for that.
That's great. Yeah, it's just good to hear things like that. Thank you for letting us know about that. And I also thank Brian Cook to also thank his guys too. Good
Absolutely.
job. Good job. And thank you, Tom, did you listen to our whole meeting? I'm sorry, it was a really long meeting tonight.
Oh, yeah, I've been on from the beginning.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with us.
No problem. Very educational.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, great. Have a happy and healthy new year to you and the family.
You too. Thank you, and thank the board.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so comments from the floor. Any comments from the floor? Cindy, anybody call in?
No, are you going to let the trustees speak?
Nah, maybe not. No.
Teresa,
I think you forgot to do the trustees report.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Teresa, Sean Murray has his hand raised, so if you want, whenever you want to identify, I'll bring him up.
Okay, let's go through the trustees, Nick Zachary, and then I'll get to you, Sean. I'm sorry.
Okay, just not much to report right now. It's open, it's discussed in the meeting. I do want to say one thing, like enforcement is a thing that keeps recurring, and I've said this before. The village would like to work on eliminating illegal apartments, and I want to encourage people. If you're aware of an illegal, it's often the neighbors that are aware of it. There's been a one-family house next to you for years, and suddenly there's 6 cars there and different entrances. You know better than anyone. If you want to report illegal apartments, I'm going to ask that, people have to be able to report in confidence. You can pretty much reach out to any board member, but I would suggest calling the village hall so it goes directly to the administrator and the building inspector. And, of course, asking that everybody lets people report these things in confidence, because it's not something that's very comfortable to, if you're aware of somebody, you may not want people to know who reported it. But we could use people's help if they're aware of situations that the board needs to be aware of. Not much else. The local waterfront revitalization committee has been, going slowly because of COVID, and but there is another meeting this Thursday evening. So at the next meeting, I'll report on what the progress of that is. The public survey was completed, and I think we'll be discussing that. And I'm not sure exactly what the next step is. It's been months between meetings right now, so I'll report on that at the next meeting. Lastly, if anybody hasn't noticed, the supermarket up on Welcher did open up, the Apple Farm Market. It's now the closest supermarket to the village, and they actually seem to be keeping it quite nice. It's very clean inside. I've gone there a few times. They have a great produce section, and it's very reasonably priced from what I could see. This produce, especially, and they have a lot of some of the specialty produce. If you like to, like me, if you like to cook stir fries and Asian style things, so a close supermarket that's well worth checking out. So that's all I have tonight.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Nick. Trustee, I'm trying to think. Trustee Jackson.
Okay. I'm gonna pull out something from Rich's book with the loud mufflers. I've been getting a couple of residents have brought it to my attention that there is a few problems around the village with people with loud mufflers and these cars that are have these customized things on them, and I'm gonna bring it to the attention of our police chief that we should be taking a look at that. I know Rich always used to complain about them, and they're still out there, and that's a concern, which leads me into my other concern is the fact that school's back in, and as one of our residents, Herman, mentioned earlier about speeding and running up and down Tate Avenue and other places in the village, be mindful of your neighbors in terms of, like I said, these loud mufflers. Be mindful of our children in the streets now that they're back at school, and certainly be safe out there. You know, this is crazy times with COVID, and we've all got to do our utmost to make sure that we stay safe, our families stay safe, and our community stays safe. So don't take anything for granted. Be mindful of your surroundings in terms of how you move about, not only the village, but also Westchester in general, because we've got a little bit more ways to get out of this tunnel as we go forward. And want to make sure that, next year we can see each other, hug each other, and respect each other even more. That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Dwayne. Where is he? Deputy Mayor Funchin, where are you?
Thank you.
You still awake?
Well, my main thing is in the executive session, but I'd like to say that both Linda and our Mayor, Teresa, Linda Glacy, have done so much about getting these pods taxed. And of course, Stephanie writing the thing. It's the best news we could have for the New Year's. It's certainly a nice bright spot compared to all the COVID garbage that we have to put up. And I also want to commend Sandy Galiff and Pete Harcum, Dave and Marcus. I really think it's great with all the work that was done. Especially our mayor has really been on top of all this for ages, and I think it's a great light at the end of the tunnel. I just want to mention one thing on that. Teresa, you mentioned about a pilot. I just want to make sure that maybe a lot of the new people coming into the village do not understand what a pilot is. It literally means, it's the abbreviation for payment in lieu of taxes, which is a different way of taxing. Your house and our houses in the village are all appraised, and it would be difficult to appraise how much a nuclear pod is worth. You know what, it's a tax it.
No, yes and no. There's ways.
Okay, yeah. So, but I'm just saying this is
there's
an alternate form of taxation. I think that having come from the federal government, where they're great for acronyms and in abbreviations, that it always drives me crazy, because you can't always assume that people know pilot. There's probably people out there thinking, what, is there something about an airport coming on or something? So
yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
And so that was it. It is. It's kind of confusing at times, but everybody enjoy Martin Luther King's birthday. He was a great man that really got this country through some very difficult times, and we're going through difficult times now. So we need more people like him around to lead us through this bad times. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rich. Okay, so comments from the floor or out in Zoom. Sean, are you still there?
Yep, I'm going to bring him over right now. Okay, Sean, you got to unmute yourself and or turn on your video if you like.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks again for hearing me. At the last workshop meeting, you guys had discussed having the building inspector look closer at accessory apartments, and there's actually some comments from the floor about, because the re-inspection had not taken place, that some of the applicants should go through the initial process again, and there was discussion about reinterpretation of the legislative intent of the accessory apartments. And although the accessory apartment issue has been an ongoing issue, I think the building inspectors that we have now are more proactive when it comes to chasing down violations and fines. And I believe there are more pressing issues within the village right now that they shouldn't be moved over to just doing accessory apartments. There's many businesses that are operating outside of the law right now. They are trying to get some court dates, which could help with fines, with bringing in revenue, as well as bringing a lot of people who are in violation of the law to bring them into the law.
Yep.
I think redirecting their efforts to accessory apartments might be not the best thing right now. And you know, we had bought computers so that inspections can come up on a certain time frame, as well as backflow inspections and grease inspections. You know, their time should be used for that, as well as going out and finding, being proactive to you know, catch. I don't want to say catch, but to help bring in the businesses who are operating illegally, who are doing modifications to their property, who are increasing their floor space, all kinds of things. That's where their efforts should be focused, because it would help out with our tax base. Like I said, it'll help out bringing in some fines, because some of these businesses are going to operate for the next couple of years illegally, and hopefully these fines can be accumulated on a weekly basis or a daily basis or whatever. I just think that part of the prioritizing their efforts should be more towards the enforcement and a little bit less towards the accessory apartments. You know, there are going to be accessory apartments that have complaints, and people should go over and look at that. But for wholesale for 30 people, it takes up a lot of time, and it's really not going to bring any benefit to the village for the amount of money, the amount of time that would be expended for them to perform these inspections. You know, if you just look at the Route 9 corridor, you'll see there's been 100% lot coverage for a couple of places. There's a whole list of properties that are operating outside of the law and have continued to do so for many years. And they should be focused on bringing them into compliance instead of focusing on accessory apartments. That's all I wanted to say. I know it's been a little long, so.
No, that's fine. I think those are some good points, because we've seen some things, especially on Sunday, that were really mind-blowing, so to speak. So yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying, and I think it's a good point.
Can I just say something, Teresa?
Sure.
Yeah, I've been on with the building inspectors every Monday and Friday when they're in, and they are out there addressing what Sean is bringing up. And to his point, they also did, run it by me, what we thought might be most important at the moment versus accessory apartments. And they really are proactive, and they're out there. And they've been issuing violations. They've been talking to the court. I spoke with the prosecutor. He's been on with the building inspectors. So it's much different than it was a few months ago. And I think you're going to start seeing, people either shape up or pay up, one or the other. So just wanted to give an update on that. Thanks.
Oh, great. Thanks, Steph.
Eileen is raising her hand. Teresa, you wanted to let her in?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, Eileen, you should be unmute yourself. You can speak.
Yes, I lost it for a minute. Marcus, I sent you an email. Did that get forwarded regarding property on Westchester Avenue with the stone wall? Did you get that email?
No, I didn't get that email. I'm sorry to say I did not.
Okay, I think the building inspector, I will resend it.
Okay.
It is wetlands, and they've built a wall after where the Jim Thorne auto place was, the building next to the restaurant, the Ecuadorian restaurant, after the parking lot. Then you've got another building, then you've got a house. The wetlands go into those woods back there, and there's not only a fencing, but there's also a stone wall. So I will resend that email for the I believe it should go to the building inspector.
Yeah, you can send it to the building inspector if you want to copy me as well, and then because I know when they come in, they got a lot of stuff, and I can make sure they pay attention to that as soon as they come in on Friday.
All right. The only problem is I don't know who the building inspector is.
His email is just buildinginspector@villageofbuchanan.com.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll resend it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? There was somebody that had their hand raised, and I think we answered it last time, but just to reiterate, it was Dan S. And I couldn't get the last name. He wanted to know the status of the zombie house on Bannon Avenue. Marcus, is there any other further updates with the zombie house that you have?
The town took it over for NREM. It's in the town's hands right now, and
the town owns it now?
correct. And I asked the town when they think they'll be able to put on the market for sale. So I'm waiting to get a response back from the town in regards to when it might go out to bid.
Okay, so that's some new information. That's the house that's it's the Cortlandt Street and Bannon Avenue. I've been getting it for many years. So okay, that's moving. There's a little movement on that. Okay, Dan, I hope if you're still on, I hope that answers your question. When we get further information, maybe Marcus, you can mention that at a meeting if it goes up for sale.
Absolutely.
Or, whatever the process is. Okay, so if no one has any other comments, I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel and contractual.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you, everyone.